Hi guys, it's me Chazza HD and welcome today to the qualifying watch along for the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix weekend. Of course it is Friday, but with it being a sprint weekend, that's why we're having the qualifying session, the all-important qualifying session that sets the grid for Sunday's race here today, rather than normally, of course, on a Saturday. And it's going to be a very exciting qualifying, I think. The track conditions are really all over the place. We did have practice one finish about an hour ago. Practice one was pretty wet, but as I currently watch Formula 3 qualifying, the track is drying out quite a bit, and it's a lot drier now than it was an hour ago. And looking at the forecast, there might still be the odd shower here or there, but it should be pretty much dry for the rest of the day. Now, whether that means it's going to be dry for the entirety of qualifying, of course, we'll have to see once we get to qualifying. It'll probably start wet and then get dry later on. But if that's the way it is, given how qualifying has been this season, it's, setting up to really be a very exciting qualifying session here at Spa. And of course, qualifying in 2023 has been a highlight of the season. We've had so many great qualifying sessions, so many surprising results, and let's hope for the same today. And there is, before we get into this, firstly, the build-up to qualifying. As you can see on your screen, qualifying starts in just under an hour and a half from now. There is a bit of news to get into before we properly get into the teams and how I think they will do here in qualifying. So that's what we'll get into in a moment. The news, if you're wondering, is to do with Alpine, Williams. Also, also we're going to be getting into car upgrades because, of course, we have now the official list from the FIA as to officially who has brought what upgrades this weekend. So we'll get into that as well. And this man on screen, there is big news with him. Don't think it's officially confirmed, but it is essentially confirmed. Max Verstappen will not start the race on Sunday on pole position. He will be taking a 5-place grid penalty for a new gearbox. Of course, he has had trouble with the gearbox this season. Had to take an extra gearbox in Saudi Arabia, which of course was the cause of why really he didn't win that Grand Prix that weekend. That's why Verstappen, again, I don't think it's been officially confirmed yet, but once it is, that's why Max Verstappen will not be starting on pole position on Sunday. Of course, though, he dominantly won the race here last year from, 14th on the grid, 13th on the grid, something like that. So it doesn't really matter where Max Verstappen starts. Even if he started at the very back and was given a 10-second penalty just to try and hold him up as much as possible, I still think he'd probably win the race by a comfortable margin because the Red Bull and Max is just way too quick right now. So, I'll let you know when the official confirmation comes out. It may have already come out. I will quickly check. But, just want to bring you guys news of that before we get into qualifying. Just so you know that, even if Verstappen does end up P1, which he most likely will, he will not start there, most likely, for Sunday's Grand Prix. Quickly want to say, hope you guys are doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world, where you're from, whether you're at work, at, high school, college, whatever. Hope you're all doing well, and I hope you can join me in enjoying and watching along this qualifying session today. If you can't obviously watch along, then I will keep you bang up to date with everything that goes on in the session. And we'll properly start building up to the session in a few minutes' time. But again, we need to start with some big news. Not absolutely gigantic news, but big news nonetheless. in the F1 world, which has come out in the last, say, hour or so. So I'll just quickly get it up on my Twitter so I can show you guys just in a moment. So, right, I'll just quickly hide the timer and then share my screen. So, firstly, Alpine have dismissed Otmar Safnauer and Alain Permain, and they will be leaving the team after the conclusion of this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. Alain Permain, the sporting director, he's been at the team since they were Benetton all the way back in 1989. He's been such a long-standing figure in Formula One, and to be honest, I'd be surprised if Alan was not picked up by another team. I know he was, with the Enstone team for so long, but I do think he could do a good job at another team. And I think, honestly, the problems at Alpine are bigger than just him. For Otmar Safnauer, it's not really that big of a surprise, him losing his job. Obviously, Laurent Rossi lost his job. What was it, a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Or last week? He was replaced as CEO. And now Otmar bites the bullet as well. So, not a surprise that Alpine and the hierarchy at Renault, they are not happy with how this season has gone. Rightfully so, because at the start of the year, they were the 5th best team. They were way quicker than McLaren. And once we got to the start of the European season, they looked like they could contend with teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, and to a degree Aston Martin as well, and fight for big points and even maybe podium positions. But ever since then, they've completely dropped off. They've completely dropped off in 2023, and are now in the position where they're struggling to get any of their cars into the top 10 even. It's been quite a fall from this team. And really, it's been because of a lack of development this season, which is the reason they've fallen so far back. But I got to say, with Safnauer and Alain Permain going, I mean, technically speaking, it is the right decision because they weren't going anywhere. But the problem is deeper than these two men and Laurent Rossi and Cyril Abiteboul even in the past. The problem with Alpine or Renault is systemic. It's got nothing to do with who you hire as team principal. And as far as I'm concerned, you could, have Christian Horner, Toto Wolff, even Ross Brawn come back to Formula One and run that team, and nothing really would change. It's just a systemic problem with Alpine. Of course, back when they were the Renault Works team, they spent, I think, over $1 billion and didn't really go anywhere. And obviously now we have a budget cap. If they can't even go anywhere when they're spending disgusting amounts of money, they're not really going to go anywhere when, you're limited with how much you can spend. So, not a surprise, this news, but Alpine, again, it's just it's a fundamental issue with the hierarchy and the way the organisation is run as to why they continue to disappoint, which they have done pretty much every year, Renault, since they came back into the Sport as a Works team back in 2016. Quickly, though, I just wanted to touch on, apparently, one of the names as to who could be the new team principal, long-term team principal. And according to Albert Fabrega, Mattia Binotto is reportedly on Alpine's shortlist as a potential next team principal. Now, they have actually replaced Otmar Safnauer with a new team principal, but I'm not sure that new team boss, if I can I'll just come away from this and just find the tweet to to find exactly the guy's name. If that new team boss is a temporary team principal until the end of the season, it will be very interesting to see just how or who they choose to go for the team principal role, of course, long term. So let me just try and find this quickly for you guys. And yep, here it is. So I'll just get it back up on screen. So you can see here, Alpine announces the departure of Otmar Safnauer. He'll be replaced by Bruno Famin as interim team principal. So yeah, that is confirmation that Bruno Famin is just a stand-in, really until the end of the season, I'd imagine. And then they'll go for a permanent team principal starting probably, in the new year. I will say, though, it would be peak Alpine to select Mattia Binotto as their team principal, a guy who was such a failure of a team principal at Ferrari and was, one of the biggest memes on the grid. For him to become the new Alpine team principal would just be quite hilarious, to be honest. And it would show that Alpine are just not a serious team, because everyone has said this. Binotto is a very good, if not great, technical guy, and he's great to have if you want to hire him as a technical director or just a piece of your technical team. But he is not a team principal. That is not what Mattia Binotto is best at, or even that good at. So yeah, it would just be it would be quite funny if they went for that. They probably will go for that because they're just idiots. They don't really know what they're doing. The Renault organization in Formula One really is reminiscent of Toyota back in the 2000s, where they just spent shit tons of money, but they didn't actually know what to do with the money and made, well, not that many smart decisions whatsoever. So, yeah, Alpine are not going anywhere. Simple as that. They will always be a midfield team. They are never fundamentally going to transform into this front-running Formula One team. We've been hoping they will for years. It hasn't happened. It's never going to happen. So there's no point even trying to, there's no point even trying to believe that it can happen anymore, because, they've tried everything. They've made, lots of terrible decisions, and they are pretty much at the minute where they were, championship-wise, say, not 5 years ago, more like 6 years ago. So, yeah, it's just incredibly poor from the Alpine team. Anyway, let's move on to another piece of news to do with the Williams team. Williams announcing that they are welcoming Pat Fry as their new chief technical officer. Of course, you'll know this man. Worked for McLaren, Ferrari, was recently at Alpine as well. He's been around in Formula One for such a long time. And, I mean, he still has definitely worth in Formula One and quality to bring. And as well, has vitally good experience of Formula One, which will really help this team going forward. I think it really does show, though, just how incredible Williams' season has been, because they haven't had a technical director or chief technical officer until this point of the season, yet they are 7th in the championship. It just shows you that despite the lack of finances, just what they're capable of, despite all of those things going against them. So yeah, this is a good hire. I wouldn't say a great hire, for Williams, but it is a good hire, and it's good that they have finally filled out this role of Chief Technical Officer, because, yeah, that was obviously quite a big worry coming into 2023, and that was one of the main reasons that people were worrying about whether Williams would even be able to, be competitive with anyone in 2023, because they didn't have any technical leads for the team. But thankfully, they have that now, and Pat Fry's job, his first job, will be looking at 2024 and what they can do and how they can try and build on what's been a good 2023 Formula 1 season, a good 2023 car, and yeah, try and build on that and maybe start next season even better off than they started this season, which would be great to see. So yeah, very good news there when it comes to Williams. Now, there is one final piece of news that I wanted to get into, but I think I may have forgotten exactly what that final thing was. Let me just quickly look. Pat Fry, by the way, he starts his job on November 1st. So yeah, he definitely will be focusing on next year's car. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the other piece of news was. Alpine, Williams. I talked about Max Verstappen and his penalty. Oh yeah, the other thing was car upgrades. That's what it was. So of course, it's Friday, meaning we get the official list of car upgrades. So let's get into that. Let me just find the official list quickly. And here you go. So, right. So I'll just get this back on screen. So starting with Red Bull, their upgrade is circuit specific, so nothing really there. Ferrari have a performance upgrade, a new rear wing for drag reduction, lower downforce top and lower rear wing designs. This is obviously in view to if we have dry running here at Spa. Ferrari wants to make sure they, that they can try and get the best out of what their biggest strength is, which is straight line speed, essentially. So, yeah, that's what Ferrari are trying to do. And of course, this will be an upgrade, a small upgrade in view to their home race at Monza, which of course will be desperate to try and win if they can. The next team is Mercedes-Benz, and they have brought quite a few upgrades for this Grand Prix compared to other teams. So we'll get into the pictures of these upgrades soon. So they have a new Coke/engine cover, where it says side view Coke tube camber increased. New floor body, small changes to the floor underside volume distribution, and a new rear wing for drag reduction. Small chord upper rear wing. We'll get into the pictures of those in a moment. They also have a new side pod inlet, a taller side pod inlet for reliability reasons. But yeah, the new side pod and floor design, really, Mercedes will be hoping that it gives them an extra 2 to 3 tenths of a second this weekend, because if it does, they'll probably end up, at least in race conditions, as the second best team out there, which would be a bit better than a lot of us expected. Alpine, the only performance upgrade for them is floor body, and it says revised forward fences, canoe ramps, and smoother diffuser wall cutout profile. So really a minor upgrade for Alpine, but at least it's something that might make them a bit quicker this weekend. McLaren, all of their upgrades are circuit specific. Alfa Romeo, all of theirs are circuit specific. And then you've got Aston Martin. The only performance upgrade they've got is a new floor edge. It says floor edge updated to subtly revise the geometry. Conceptually similar, so it's just a small upgrade to the floor, essentially. Pretty much as big of an upgrade as the Alpine. Again, though, quite small. And AlphaTauri, I've got a new rear wing, a performance upgrade. Compared to the previous assembly, it says at this drag level, the rear wing tips have been modified to increase the size of the cutouts. They have brought quite a few updates to the rear wing in the last few races. Of course, AlphaTauri do have a big issue with drag, so that's why they've been trying to, bring some of the updates to the rear wing, because obviously that's the area of the car they believe is causing the drag so much. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the final team is Williams, but their 2 upgrades are circuit specific. So the only upgrades are Mercedes, Aston Martin, Alpine, Ferrari, and who else? AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri and Ferrari is a new rear wing. A new floor, slightly different floor for Aston Martin and Alpine. And Mercedes clearly have the biggest upgrade package this weekend. So, yeah, that's what it's looking like on car upgrades. Let me just zoom in a bit for these pictures that I'm about to show. And, yeah, you can see here the new detail on the floor edge. So on the top here is the new floor, and on the bottom is the old one. So you can see they've gone with a different design to this area, certainly, compared to here on the bottom. And of course, because they've changed the side pod design, which I'll show in a moment, they have to do that to make sure it all interacts with each other correctly. I think a beam wing there for Aston Martin. Here is, I think, a rear wing comparison between the 2 different configurations. On the right is the higher downforce rear wing, and on the left is the lower downforce rear wing. And you can see differences in the shape and obviously the wing level. But it's not anything absolutely massive. And this upgrade is not a massive upgrade or anything. It's just a slight upgrade just to improve on their straight line speed, which of course, if it's dry at any point this weekend, will help this team quite a bit. Let me go back a bit earlier to show the new Mercedes side pod. And yeah, here's a picture. So on the top here is the new side pod, on the bottom is the old one. You can see towards the middle of the side pod, it is a bit more sucked in, and they've redesigned really that area, say the middle of the side pod going back towards the floor. And you can see really starting from here where my mouse is all the way down to the floor. Yeah, quite a bit of a redesign there compared to the old one here on the bottom, where it's a lot more straight or stable the whole way through. There's another picture, though, that shows it better. This is the one. And you can see, yeah, towards the rear of the side pod going down to the floor. Here on the top is the new one compared to the old one on the bottom. And yeah, the old one on the bottom is a lot straighter going down to the floor, when on the new one on the top is a bit more curved and thinner looking than the one on the bottom, the original one. So Mercedes, of course, in Monaco, the side pod they did bring was the first version of this new concept they've been going for, compared to their zero pod concept, which failed spectacularly. And what we're seeing here at Spa is the first update to that side pod design. So it should theoretically give them 2 to 3 tenths of a second of an advantage, or a gain, rather, on what they had previously. So in terms of improvement, Mercedes are the team to look out for this weekend. And we will see, compared to McLaren, especially in that middle sector, if we have a dry or wet session, how they do, because the middle sector will really show whether this upgrade has worked or not. So yeah, we will keep a keen eye on that. But yeah, those are all the upgrades. Let me just quickly get the timer back on screen. And then we'll get properly in a moment back into the build-up. There you go, about an hour and 5 minutes to go until qualifying begins at Spa. So yeah, not too many upgrades this weekend. Not necessarily a surprise. It is a sprint weekend. We are expecting the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, which is the next race on the calendar, and the first race after the summer break. We are expecting that race to be quite upgrade heavy, because the teams really are saving their last big upgrade for that particular Grand Prix, as it's really the last European race where you'll want to bring a car upgrade. As F2 qualifying, by the way, has started, and everybody is going out on dry tyres, just to let you guys know about the current weather conditions. And looking at the track, it is damp, but the sky looks a lot better, and it looks like it's going to be dry, probably for the rest of the day. So we are probably going to get, guys, a dry qualifying session, which, to be honest, I'd probably prefer a dry qualifying session, especially in regards to Mercedes, to really see again whether that upgrade has worked for them. Yeah, we'll find out, obviously, in an hour's time. And let's hope the rain does subside a bit. Now, of course, I'll let you know how F2 qualifying goes, because I should be covering F2 tomorrow. And one final thing I want to say quickly before we get into the teams and I get into depth about how I think they'll get on in qualifying today. Tomorrow, of course, I plan to be going live for the F2 sprint race, and then after that doing a preview and a watch along for the F1 sprint race. However, because of the forecast, if we do get a lot of the sessions cancelled, red flagged, all of that, there is a chance, I have to warn you guys, there is a chance that I might not stream tomorrow, but it all depends on the weather, and if the weather is as bad as what it says it will be tomorrow. The forecast tomorrow isn't actually, it's not a doomsday type of forecast. It's not going to be, truly the end of the world, but the heaviest rain most likely will be tomorrow. And if it's, really throughout the entire day, and it was as heavy as it was during practice 1 in Formula 1, which was, an hour or so ago, or about an hour and a half ago, then, yeah, it's probably going to be a day of not much running at all. So, yeah, I'm just warning you guys right now that, there is a chance that I won't stream tomorrow if I feel like we're not going to get much running because of the rain. But if it looks like it's going to be good enough, then I will still go live. And don't forget, again, tomorrow, if I do go live, it'll be 12:30 p.m. UK time when I go live. Again, for the F2 sprint race, and then the F1 sprint race later on we'll be covering as well. And of course, the Sunday race will be live at 12 p.m. UK time for that. But yeah, that's all that stuff. Let's now get into the teams, though, and how I think they will get on in this qualifying session coming up. And actually, one thing I will do quickly, just to make sure, is have another quick check of the forecast. And yeah, looking at the forecast, it probably isn't going to rain for the rest of the day. The chance of rain is still decently high, about 40% at the minute, looks like. But yeah, the chance of rain, it looks way less likely compared to earlier. And if I was to guess, it probably will be 99% dry for the rest of the day at Spa. But again, really, it is tomorrow, Saturday, which is the day to worry about in terms of weather. Sunday, the forecast looks dry. A bit blustery, but definitely dry. The chance of rain for Sunday at the minute is about 25 to 30%. So yeah, just an update there on the forecast. Dane, what were the problems, Chaz, in the UK or Belgium of the Saturday? I'm talking about the weather at Spa, because again, the forecast is quite, again, it's not apocalyptic, but given how the FIA, rightfully so, want to play it safe this weekend, given the amount of rain forecast for tomorrow, there is definitely a chance we don't get much running tomorrow. So that's why I'm saying, again, that there is a chance I won't stream tomorrow, because if I, get up, watch, say the F3 sprint race, which normally is before, or in the morning, and obviously the sprint shootout in the morning, and if that ends up getting pretty much cancelled because of how bad the rain is, then I might decide not to bother streaming, because at the end of the day, the sprint, it doesn't really matter that much, and I don't want to be, just doing a stream for hours and hours when we don't actually get to see any running. So yeah, we will see. No guarantees yet. We'll have to see when we get up tomorrow, really. Obviously a weather forecast is never going to be 100% accurate. It might be actually a bit better than expected. So yeah, we will see tomorrow at Spa. But let's get into today at Spa, where it looks like it's going to be probably, thankfully, a dry qualifying. And we'll start with the Red Bull team. Even with Max Verstappen taking his 5-place grid penalty, he will still be first in qualifying. Absolutely no doubt about it. His confidence is sky high. He's the best driver in the world right now. The Red Bull car is way too good, really, in all conditions. So, yeah, Verstappen and Red Bull will end up in first. But really, the aim for Red Bull today is to make sure that Max's teammate, Sergio Perez, can qualify in second, meaning he'll start the race on Sunday in first, because they don't want to make, winning their 12th race of the season and winning their, 13 wins in a row. They don't want to make that job for them on Sunday too difficult. So, yeah, that's really the aim for Red Bull, is to try and make sure, to get Perez up there to still secure pole position. Even if Perez, though, starts on pole for Sunday's race and Max starts back in P6, I still think Max Verstappen easily wins the race on Sunday. As we saw last year, his pace, even compared to his teammate, even on tyres which were wearing out a lot more, was still way, way better than the what we saw, compared to Sergio Perez. So, yeah, Red Bull, they're the best team. They're going to be finishing first in qualifying today with Max Verstappen. Whether they start the race tomorrow or not tomorrow, whether they start the race on Sunday on pole, we'll have to see. Really depends on Sergio Perez and whether he can deliver in these conditions. We have seen him deliver in these conditions. He did qualify fourth for Racing Point here in changeable conditions. He does have a decent record here at Spa as well. This is definitely a track he more so enjoys. So, yeah, we'll see how Perez can get on. My prediction is, Verstappen first. Perez, I think my prediction for him was P7. So, yeah, we'll see whether he can do a bit better than that. As in the F2 qualifying, by the way, there is a red flag for a crashed car. And it does appear that rain is coming back. How much rain, though, we will have to see. So, yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on that. Mercedes-Benz, they are the team to look out for, really, out of the top teams this weekend, with that new, quite big upgrade to the side pod and floor. um, in dry conditions, if it does work for them, really, it should put them not only ahead of McLaren. I think they probably would go ahead of Ferrari this weekend, even on pure qualifying pace. So yeah, we'll see with Mercedes whether it can work for them. My prediction is Lewis Hamilton to finish up in 4th place, and for George Russell to finish in P5. Of course, if Verstappen does finish 1st and then start in 6th, that would be 3rd and 4th on the grid, which would be a very good starting position for Sunday's race. And yeah, even 4th and 5th, that would be, I think, pretty good for the Mercedes team, given how qualifying this season has not really been that strong of an area for them. Even when with, say, one car they've had a good qualifying, they've never had a consistently really good qualifying with both cars this season. In Australia, of course, they did get 2nd and 3rd. Other than that, really, they've never had with both cars a consistent, good qualifying session. So yeah, 4th and 5th would be excellent for the team. Lewis Hamilton should be the faster Mercedes driver. He is tremendous around this racetrack. He has won the Belgian Grand Prix, 4 times previously, and has always been super, super quick here. So yeah, Lewis should be on top form, wet or dry, and we'll see if that new side pod and floor can give him a bit of an extra boost to maybe put it on the front row of the grid, which would be, in my view, a lot more impressive from Mercedes than what we saw in Hungary, because in Hungary, that track was always going to suit them in qualifying more than this track is. So yeah, it would be impressive if they were to put it on the front row on pure pace here, especially in dry conditions. So we'll see whether they are able to do that. As looking at the F2 session, there is quite a bit of rain in the area, but I'm not sure the rain is actually hitting the track as of yet. But yeah, Mercedes, that's my prediction for them. 4th and 5th. Don't think they'll be quite as quick as McLaren over a single lap, but when it comes to race trim, I do expect Mercedes-Benz to be the faster team, because Mercedes, in Hungary, Mercedes, I wouldn't say necessarily were the faster car in the race compared to McLaren, but they weren't that much slower than McLaren. And we have to remember this track doesn't suit the McLaren in the dry as well as the Mercedes car, because the Mercedes car has a bit better straight line speed. And we have seen this season McLaren obviously not do as well with the potential of their car around tracks which are higher speed. So yeah, Mercedes, I think, will have probably a pretty good weekend, especially if that upgrade does fully work out for them here at Spa. One final thing to get into before I get onto the rest of the teams, actually, is one thing that is going to be very interesting for this session is, and of course for the sprint tomorrow, I'll go back to these pictures quickly, is, this qualifying session coming up in 50 minutes time, it might be a wet session, might be a dry session. Obviously tomorrow the sprint shootout and sprint race will probably be wet. It's going to be interesting to see setup wise who goes for what, because obviously there is a lot to gain if you go for a wet setup, but with the race being dry on Sunday, if you go for a high or higher, quite a bit higher downforce setup, you will get absolutely destroyed on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see whether certain teams decide, fuck it, let's just put not a full wet setup on, but more of a wet setup on to try and maybe bag a load of points in the sprint race tomorrow, and maybe take that risk to get the good grid position today for Sunday's race, even though on Sunday they will probably lose those positions. So that is one thing to look out for. I'm guessing that pretty much all of the teams will go for a dry setup, because you don't want to be that team that is, 2-3 seconds a lap off the pace of your rivals because you're running a wet setup. You don't want to be doing that, as the rain, by the way, at Spa is now starting to fall quite steadily. Drivers still out there on dry tyres though, so yeah, no sign of any wet tyres as of yet. But yeah, I'll keep you updated as to whether we get the track drenched in rain once again. But yeah, we'll see when it comes to car setup who maybe decides to go for it for the glory today and for tomorrow, and who is willing to suffer on Sunday. One team that will be maybe thinking about that to a degree is Aston Martin, who, yeah, they have brought a new upgrade to the floor. Nothing massive, though. Yeah, just a slight redesign of the floor. Again, it's as I read earlier, the new part of the floor is still in line with the concept that they do have. So it's not like the Mercedes where it's, they've completely reshaped the floor and the side pod. So yeah, not really that big of an upgrade for Aston Martin. At most, it will probably give them 1/10 of a second, which around this track is really not that much lap time, to be honest. And this is, of course, a track that isn't going to suit their car. They will be praying that it is a wet qualifying session, because that's their best chance of a good result. Fernando Alonso at the wheel definitely is capable of that. And of course, the Aston Martin at high speed is not that quick at all. So yeah, we will see with Alonso and Aston Martin, where, if it does rain, whether they can capitalize on that. As by the way, it is, raining quite a bit now at Spa, and some of the drivers out there on dry tyres probably going to come back in for some wet tyres. So yeah, I'll let you know if it does stop in the next few minutes or so. So yeah, Aston Martin, despite that small upgrade, they have got to pray for some rain if they're going to be anywhere near Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari, because at the minute they're not on any of those teams' level around any racetrack. Whether it's high downforce, medium downforce, low downforce, it doesn't matter. They are not on the same level as any of those teams right now in Formula One. So yeah, Aston Martin are going to have probably a bit of a struggle today. Fernando Alonso, I think, will get into the top 10 just about, but he will only qualify in P10. Lance Stroll, I think, will probably be knocked out in, 13th, 14th place. Of course, Stroll has had a poor season so far. I will say, though, with Stroll, I thought his race in Hungary was pretty good, considering how poor Aston Martin were in Hungary. And obviously, Stroll started 14th and ended up finishing in P10. So, yeah, good race there for Stroll, but he's, if he has turned his form around, it's really too late, because Aston Martin are really nowhere at the moment in Formula One. So yeah, we will see how they get on, and if it can rain enough, maybe Fernando Alonso can drag this car into the top 6, top 7 on the grid, which would be a pretty good result and a pretty good grid position for the Sunday race, where, again, they won't be anywhere near Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, or Ferrari either. So yeah, don't expect really that much from Aston Martin. Ferrari next up, of course. Ferrari did not have a good Hungarian Grand Prix. Ferrari did actually end up quickest in practice 1. If you're wondering why I've not shown the practice 1 results, it's because it wasn't really a practice session. Nobody was really trying to do quick lap times, and basically practice was drivers just trying to get some laps in so they could get a feel of the conditions. Nobody was pushing in the first practice session, which is why I've not shown any of the results, because it's really completely irrelevant to what is going to happen in qualifying in about 45 minutes time. So yeah, Ferrari, given that there is definitely, especially with the rain falling now, a good chance of rain during the session, that is really going to hamper their chances. They need it to be dry, because in dry conditions, Ferrari have a car potentially good enough to be the second quickest car out there in qualifying trim. But in this current, weather conditions, I think they'll struggle quite a bit. I mean, we saw in Canada, didn't we? And by the way, it is raining very hard now at Spa. A lot of rain now falling. So yeah, qualifying, I would imagine, and yeah, very heavy rain. I would imagine qualifying is going to be wet, probably entirely, unless the rain stops in the next 10 minutes or so, because it is raining that heavily. Yeah, with Ferrari, I mean, we saw in Canada, in the dry, they were very quick. They could have been quick enough, maybe even to contend for the victory in Canada. But in the wet qualifying, they were horrendous. They were, 10th and 11th on the grid. Carlos Sainz, I think, had a 3-place penalty. So that's why he started a few positions back. But even when he didn't have that penalty, I think the best he did was like P7, which was obviously not that good at all. So yeah, Ferrari just don't have a good car for wet conditions, and it's gonna be a very tricky session for the Ferrari team to really get firstly both cars into the top 10, and then if they do get both cars into the top 10, for them to try and get a decent starting position, because if they can't get a good starting position, they're probably not going to score that many points in the race on Sunday, because again, they still have their issues about managing tyres and their general race pace. I have to say, by the way, with the rain that is falling at the minute at at Spa, that they are probably going to cancel the rest of F2 qualifying because it is raining that hard. So yeah, F2 qualifying, I would imagine, is over, and maybe we'll see a delayed start to qualifying. Let's hope not, but that's what it looks like at the moment. So yeah, Ferrari, unfortunately, it's going to be a wet session, and they will struggle and probably end up as the 4th or 5th best team out there. Their only hope, really, of a great result, I think, is Charles Leclerc. We know that he can be very special in wet conditions. Carlos Sainz can be very good as well, but Carlos is just less likely to produce that special lap, I feel, for the Ferrari team. So, yeah, really, it is on Leclerc to produce something that is really out of the blue. As the pit lane, it is raining that hard. The pit lane is literally flooding. It is raining that hard. So, yeah, the F2 qualifying, they may as well just cancel the session and say that's it, because there is absolutely no way they are going to be doing the rest of the session. Absolutely no way. So, yeah, Ferrari, it's going to be a struggle. They're just not in a great place right now, and really need a new upgrade to improve their chances going forward for the rest of the season. But as I got into, the only upgrade they've got is a new rear wing, which is a minor upgrade for them. For McLaren, this rain is great news for them, because obviously we know that in dry conditions around power tracks, they still have quite a weakness. Mercedes-powered cars are not that quick at power tracks because the Mercedes power unit is one of the weakest in the field. And McLaren, I don't think have as big of a drag issue with their car now as they did at the start of the season, or as they certainly did back in 2022. But it is still an issue to a certain extent, and they still are, in a straight line, one of the slowest teams on the grid. So, yeah, McLaren, this is great news for them if we do actually get some running in today for qualifying. Lando Norris, definitely watch out for him, because a couple years ago in the McLaren, he looked like he was on course for pole position in that qualifying session a couple years ago, but then sadly crashed at the top of Eau Rouge and Radion, and that obviously forced him to, I think, start the race eventually from, was it P10 or P15 eventually, because he had to take a penalty, I think, as well. So, yeah, it was such a shame because he was so quick in Q1 and Q2. He probably would have been on pole position, would Lando. And also, watch out for Oscar Piastri, very talented driver himself, and I'm sure he can produce some great pace in the wet as well. And the McLaren car, we did see back in Canada before their upgrade when both cars made it into Q3, and I think they started from 6th and 7th in Canada. That's just how quick they were in the wet. And also in Monaco, when the rain started to fall, so the McLaren, as I think we might have had a brief disconnection there. Sorry about that if that did happen. The McLaren car should be one of the cars to look out for in wet conditions. So watch out for them today, and especially, again, look out for this man, Lando Norris. He's on top form. He's had a great season. And again, in the wet, he is definitely one of the drivers to look out for. And currently, guys, I do have a poll running in the live chat where I've asked you guys in a wet qualifying Spa today, which is going to be, who will take pole position for the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix? Your options are Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, and Charles Leclerc. Let me know, out of those four options, who you think is most likely in a wet qualifying today at Spa to take pole position. For me, still, I'd have to go Max Verstappen, but I would give Lando Norris a pretty good chance of getting pole, genuinely, for the race on Sunday, given just how good the McLaren car is at the minute, especially in wet conditions. So we will see how McLaren get on. Right, now we'll whiz through the rest of the teams, and then I'll get onto a couple more things, and then we'll get to your comments in the live chat, as still it is raining very heavily. The rain, it looks to be slightly less heavy than it was a couple minutes ago, but it is still very heavy. Yeah, there's no way that the F2 cars are going to be going out there and doing any running. Absolutely no chance. For Alpine, of course, today has been a headline day for them. Otmar Safnauer, their team principal, will be gone after this race. Their sporting director, Alain Permain, will be gone as well after this race. And Alpine really are in crisis because they hoped to be starting this season, and really in general this season hoped to be doing a lot better than what they have been. They haven't scored a World Championship point since the Austrian Grand Prix, which was about a month ago. And they've only scored, since that podium at Monaco, they've only scored, how many points? 10 points, I think, in the last 5 races, which is really poor considering in Miami, I think they were 7th or 8th and 9th or something like that. And then obviously in Monaco, they were on the podium and Pierre Gasly collected a few points, I think, in P8 7, I think it was. So, yeah, it's been an incredibly poor 2023 season for them, given how they started the season. And things have just really fallen apart for this team ever since the summer break of last year, where they fumbled replacing Fernando Alonso with Oscar Piastri. And that has come back to bite them, because Piastri obviously now performing at a very high level for McLaren. And Piastri, I do believe, is a better talent than Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. So, yeah, they fumbled that. And really, since then, they've just been on a downturn, really. I mean, they ended 2022 well. They secured 4th in the championship, which was a good result for them. But to be honest, they should have secured 4th in the championship in a lot more dominant style than they actually did, because they were quite comfortably quicker than McLaren, but quite a lot of times fumbled some quite big points, and that is a big reason why they were still running it close in that battle for 4th in the championship. And then for this season, they were hoping to significantly close the gap to Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. They did at the start of the year, but then those teams have simply outdeveloped them, and now Alpine are back to not even where they were last year. They're even worse than that. They're basically back to where they were back in 2021. And they're one of the slower midfield teams, as you can see there. Water running across the track on the entry to Eau Rouge, and yeah, a lot of standing water out there. And so still no cars out on track for the F2 qualifying session, as there is about 7 minutes to go, or 6.5 minutes now to go in that session. Yeah, Alpine just in a terrible place. This weather, though, does present a better opportunity for them to get a good result, because in the dry, I don't think they really have a chance of getting into Q3. So, yeah, in the wet, they probably will, you would imagine, get a car into the top 10. Not sure about both cars getting into the top 10, but if they can just get one car decently into like the top 8 on the grid, I think that would be a very good save for what is probably going to be still, especially with a dry race on Sunday, it's going to be quite a poor weekend for the Alpine team. Yeah, this team, I've just lost complete faith in them, really, after the drop-off since that Monaco podium. This team has always had the potential to do something great. It's not like they've never had the potential to be a front-running Formula 1 team. They absolutely have. They just never deliver on it, that potential, and they don't quite seize the moment when that moment presents itself. As we've seen this year, they became a front-running team for 2 or 3 races, got a podium, and they haven't really developed the car since then. The car we see at the minute is, except really for the front wing and now a slight difference on the floor, it is basically the same car we saw in Monaco. So, yeah, it's incredibly poor, their development program from the Alpine team. And yeah, this weekend I think will be, just not a great weekend. If they can get a decent result here in qualifying, great, but they're just going to get hammered, most likely, in the race. Williams next up. A shame that it's going to be wet. I don't think their chances of getting a top 10 with Alex Albon, for example, I don't think those chances are dead and buried. There is definitely still a chance to end up in Q3, but it is now a lot harder because the Williams car definitely would have been better off, running around this track in dry conditions. Just to let you guys know, the rain has eased off quite a bit, so that rain shower The worst of it looks to have passed over. The session, I don't think will really see any more running. But yeah, the worst of that shower looks to have passed. So we probably will get running at the start of qualifying, thankfully, because we've still got another half an hour until then. So yeah, with Williams, again, they really hoped for a dry track, but even if they don't get the greatest result today and they end up, I don't know, 14th, 15th on the grid at best because of the wet weather, as long as they put a dry setup on, they don't need to worry. I don't think that much, because Alex Albon in the race, if it is dry like it says it's going to be, he will make a lot of progress from even that position on the grid if that's where he starts the race from. So, yeah, if you're a Williams fan or an Albon fan, I wouldn't worry too much, because as long as the race is dry, there is definitely a good chance for points finish. But I will stick with my prediction for Williams of Albon P9. Logan Sargent will make it, in my view, into Q2, but he will not be anywhere near getting into the third part of qualifying. But I really hope he can get a bit closer to Albon here in qualifying, because this season he has not been anywhere near his teammate on lap time, which is really why Logan, I think, even though it's his debut season, is under pressure for his Formula One future, because Williams do need two drivers who are competitive with one another. And at Williams, they don't have that. They only have really one driver who is competitive enough for them. And, you know, if Williams can secure a better driver alongside Albon, I don't think Williams are going to hesitate that much in securing a better teammate for Alexander Albon. So let's hope for a better performance from Logan Sargent. Haas F1, they're going to be pretty much around where Alpine will be. Yeah, they're going to be probably, at best, getting one car into Q3. Most likely, though, they'll end up, say, one car only into Q2 with another car maybe also in Q2, but maybe likely to go out in Q1 as well. Haas definitely would enjoy drier conditions to try and get a good result today. I think in dry conditions with Hülkenberg, with how great he's been in qualifying as of late, they would have a pretty good chance of getting into the top 10. But in the wet, I know Hülkenberg is a great wet weather driver, but I'm just not sure the Haas car is that well handling of a car to be good enough in these difficult conditions. So, yeah, we'll see, of course, but I think it might be just a bit too tough for Hülkenberg. Let's hope, though, he proves me wrong. Alfa Romeo will be very happy that it is wet, of course, because in Hungary, the reason they were so quick is because their downforce levels are pretty good, and they do have a bit of a draggy car compared to their other respective teams that are also powered by the Ferrari power unit, as the F2 qualifying session has come to an end, and Oliver Behrman will start the feature race on pole position from his teammate Frederick Vesti. But to be honest, there wasn't really a proper F2 qualifying that actually happened there. But yeah, Alfa Romeo will be very happy with it being wet. It gives them a good chance of getting into Q3. Do watch out for Valtteri Bottas. He is pretty decent around this track. He's always been pretty quick here at Spa. Let's hope for a better showing from Zhou Guanyu, who was great in qualifying last week, but had a shockingly poor Grand Prix on the Sunday. So, yeah. Alfa Romeo, watch out for them. They could be, in these wet conditions, a real dark horse and a real surprise in the next hour or so. And for AlphaTauri, they will also be quite happy with it being wet, because they also do suffer with quite a bit of drag. and they don't really like, high-speed tracks in dry conditions. So, yeah, watch out for this man especially, Daniel Ricciardo. Always been quick here at Spa. Of course, won here in 2014 and has been on the podium a couple other times as well in 2016 and 2017 as well. So, yeah, Ricciardo is definitely someone to look out for. Tsunoda as well. Both AlphaTauris should be quick, and maybe they can spring a surprise in wet conditions. So yeah, watch out for Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. But those guys are all the teams, and we've got 24.5 minutes to go until the qualifying session begins here at Spa. Before I come to you guys in chat, I am just going to post a link of the stream out one final time, and then we will get into your comments in chat. Just want to say though, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do qualifying and race watch-alongs for every Grand Prix, and of course we will be, as long as the weather isn't too bad tomorrow, at Spa, covering the sprint race and the race on Sunday. And all the races, obviously, we'll be covering after the summer break, which begins on Monday. So, yeah, don't forget to subscribe, bottom right of the screen. You can do it right there. And for everyone watching right now, make sure to smash the like button. We're currently on about 29 likes. Let's try and get up to like 40 plus if we can in the next few minutes. Let me just quickly post this out. Come join us here for a wet qualifying at Spa. And I'll just quickly post out on Twitter the link as well. And also actually quickly see if there is any news that I can bring you guys. And no, can't see anything. And just to confirm, yes, Max Verstappen will be taking a 5-place grid penalty for Sunday's race because of a new gearbox. Don't think it's been officially confirmed, but the journalists that have reported it are incredibly reliable. Come join us here to watch along the wet qualifying for the Belgian GP. And yeah, another 20 minutes or so, and then the session will be underway. So there you go. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to vote in that poll at the top of the live chat. In a wet qualifying today here at Spa, who do you think is most likely out of Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton and Leclerc to get pole position? In my view, Max Verstappen. Even though he won't start on pole, I think he will still end up as the quickest. But if you think different, then yeah, make sure to vote for different. But yeah, one thing I will do actually, have a drink before we get into really the rest of this stream. But this might be a bit of a longer stream than I anticipated, obviously, because of the wet weather. So yeah. And let's just hope, obviously, that everyone gets through the session safely. And also we don't have any massively, long delays. Because I still do have, really, PTSD from 2 years ago where we did a 4.5 hour stream for the race. And we didn't see any racing, did we? We were just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting forever. And yeah, we never got any green flag racing. In the end, I have to say, we did criticize them at the time, the FIA for being slow in them updating the teams, and also their slowness in reacting to what the weather was doing. But in hindsight, and even at the time, I think we have to say that it was the right decision not to race because it was too wet. The main thing, though, still to criticise is that the fans were not given a refund, which is complete bullshit. I mean, not surprised for F1 because, of course, they want to. They don't want to be giving up extra money if they don't have to. But yeah, that was really the only sore point coming out of the weekend. But in reality, like I said, I think it was the right decision to what do you call it? To not go racing at Spa. And I'm just trying to think, actually. The Sky F1 are currently showing all of the Red Bull wins and this, massively long streak they've been on. It's currently what? Race... it is race 12 of the season, I am pretty sure. But their winning streak is 13 races because... Or no, it's not 13 races. It's 12 races because they've won all of the races so far this season, that being 11 races. And of course, won the final race of last year, which is why they have 12 consecutive race victories. Rooksfoot says that level of filler is why you're a cut above the rest, Chazza. Cheers for that. That stream was hell. It was. It set me up though for what I do now in terms of the really super long streams though. So yeah. At least we look back at that in a more fond way, because it could have been a worse day for sure. But let me just try for the next 15 minutes or so and go through your comments in the chat. Will F1 says Otmar Safnauer actually got sacked from Aston Martin at the end of 2021. Did he get sacked, or was that just a mutual departure? Let me just look. And yeah, it says on Wikipedia he left the team at the very start of 2022. Yeah, just trying to look. Yeah. I guess he was let go by Aston Martin, but I'm not sure I'd say he was sacked necessarily, because I think there was a thing, wasn't there, a couple months before that, where he was linked with Alpine and he was refuting it, and then of course at the start of the next season ended up there. So yeah, was probably already all agreed on that he was leaving Aston Martin. Ultimate Forces Alpine more likely to leave F1. Maybe. I don't think it will be for a few years yet, but yeah. If you could compare it to the other manufacturer teams, then yeah, I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if Renault decided to fully pull out at the end of this decade, especially if in 2026 they don't produce a power unit which is competitive enough compared to Mercedes, Ferrari, Audi, Red Bull powertrains. If they get that wrong, just like they did in 2014, then given the amount of money they've spent, they will probably decide to leave the sport. Because, I mean, we know from history, Renault are, at least when it comes to being a works team, they they have no problem pulling the plug on Formula One. Will F1 says Alpine did not even offer Alonso a contract for this season. Yeah, was a... I mean, to be honest, with that whole saga, Alpine and, whether to keep Alonso or replace him with Piastri, I think the problem with it was just complete indecision and hesitation. If they didn't want to keep Fernando Alonso because Fernando was, 40 years old, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Fernando, we know, is not a long-term guy. He wants to be at the team that's going to give him the best chance to win now, rather than in a few years' time. He doesn't have the time to wait around for a few years. And there's nothing wrong with Alpine if they wanted to go for a younger driver lineup and look to the future. There's nothing wrong with that, and there was nothing wrong necessarily with them, not offering Fernando a new contract. The problem is they decided to do all of that way too late, and then once they, from their point of view, they thought they had verbally agreed to a new contract, Fernando then went and signed for Aston Martin for 2023. And then, of course, they announced Piastri to replace him. Piastri then said, nope, I'm not, well, he was going to McLaren, but that he was not going to be signing for Alpine. And then, obviously, Piastri ended up at McLaren. So they just fumbled it purely through hesitation. They should have been really sorting that situation out by the time we got to the beginning of the summer. But again, they just maybe egotistically believed that Oscar would be, begging Alpine to let him drive the car. And, it was just a real dumb decision-making process from Alpine. Crystal Racing saying Spinotto leading Alpine to F1 glory. Time for Gasly to ring up Aston Martin, says Crystal Racing. Obviously, all depends on what Aston Martin would do with Lance Stroll. And we have no idea with Lance as to, if there is any, if he has to perform to a certain level to even keep that seat. Because, he's been terrible this season as Lance, but we've not heard anything about whether he will be dropped or anything. Prank says Alpine is French Ferrari, and this confirms it. Yeah, pretty much. Alpine, incredibly disappointing. Chatter HD confirms Alpine team principal, says Will F1 Gaming. Joe says, I'd like to see Lewis Hamilton do well this weekend because there are still talks of Mercedes for him signing a new contract. I think you said Sonia 2-year contract. I'm not sure what you mean by Sonia. There was talk, I think, last week that what was it? Yeah, there was talk last week that Mercedes apparently was set to give Lewis Hamilton a new 2-year contract. But again, we've not heard anything. And if we get to the Singapore Grand Prix and we've still not heard anything in regards to a new contract, then I do think there is a legitimate chance he's either going to leave Mercedes or retire, or even take a year out of Formula One. We will see. The latest he has signed a new contract for Mercedes, I think was it 2017? I think it was, where he signed a new contract at the end of August, right as we came back from the summer break. I mean, if he does that this year, then that would make sense. But again, if he was to leave it until like September or even later than that, then it would really indicate something else going on. Dane saying, I do have a conspiracy theory. The reason we're getting cancelled races due to weather is because Vettel's spirit is still on the Aston Martin car. He is still angry that Aston made him a bad car. Extreme Gaming, what do you think of the leaving / sacking of the team leader of Alpine? Like I said earlier when I covered it, I mean, it's the right decision, but the issue really is with Alpine that it doesn't matter who they hire as team principal. The issue runs deeper than who is the team principal and who is the sporting director. They could have Christian Horner as team principal, who is, as in my view, the best team principal by far in Formula One. And I don't think significantly they would be really that much better, because the way they work as a system just clearly doesn't work, and that's why they've had so many different leaders and people in leading positions in the last few years, you know, get sacked, leave, and nothing has improved, because it just doesn't matter who you put in that team. And I will say with Otmar Safnauer, of course, he was embarrassed quite thoroughly with that Piastri, Alonso, Alpine saga last year. And he did get that wrong in a big way. But let's not sit here and say that, you know, Otmar Safnauer is, you know, terrible, that he shouldn't be in Formula One. He is absolutely good enough to be in Formula One and would provide worth to a Formula One team on the grid. So I would not be surprised if he was back in Formula One in the next year or so. I would not be surprised at all. Where would he go? Not quite sure. He would probably have to accept a lower role than team principal. He'd probably have to accept like a sporting director role, more so than him getting the chance of being a team principal again. But, you know, a role like a sporting director role at even Williams or Haas F1, I don't think would be that bad for those teams. Otmar Safnauer has brilliant experience. He was obviously back in Formula One working with BAR and Honda. Obviously was with Force India for years and was a massive reason why that team you know, was such a success with such a low budget. And yeah, the Alpine thing, it hasn't worked out. But again, we have to remember that they've had so many different leaders of that team either sacked or quit, that and no difference really has been made, that I don't think really Otmar is the issue. And just because, by the way, you get sacked from, as by the way, just seen official confirmation that Max Verstappen receives a 5-place grid penalty for the Belgian Grand Prix. So it is now officially confirmed. Yeah, just because you get sacked from one job doesn't mean you are bad at that industry. Getting sacked happens a lot. A lot of people in a lot of industries get let go more than they get to resign. I mean, if you look at football management, for example, yeah, the very best managers, a lot of the time don't get sacked, but 95% of managers in football get sacked. I mean, look at Jose Mourinho, for example. Of course, he's, I guess, as a football manager, he's not as good as he once was, because his style of football is not as effective now as it was 15, 20 years ago. But despite him being such a successful manager, obviously, he's been sacked by a couple teams, my team included. And just because you're sacked from a job does not mean you should not work in the industry again or work in that particular series again. So, yeah, Otmar Safnauer, I think, will be back in Formula One. And I think he can still provide, like I said, worth to a team. And, I think for Williams, as like a sporting director or just a higher up in the team, he'd be a good person to have. Blue Flag Alpha says, I don't think we'll see any qualifying today. Track conditions look a lot better now. So, yeah. The rain has stopped by the looks of it. So we should see definitely some running in qualifying. Let's just hope we don't get any more showers. Let me read out a couple final comments. And then we will get into the start of the session. Just seen that the start of qualifying is delayed by 10 minutes after a red flag in F2 and then heavy rain. So we'll just have to wait an extra 10 minutes. So let me just get rid of that countdown and reset it. There you go. We've got about 14 minutes instead to go until qualifying actually starts. So I'll continue reading your comments. Brabamore says, I'd take Bonotto if I was Alpine. I mean, as you know, if they were to take him as a technical director, absolutely, yeah. But as a team principal, no, absolutely no way. Because Bonotto, that role of team principal, he's not good at it. That's not what he's strong at. What he is best at is technical side of Formula One. That's why Adrian Newey, despite being arguably the greatest designer of all time, that's the reason Adrian Newey has never led a Formula One team and been a team principal, because that's not what he's good at. The teams that have had him and have got the best out of him have kept him in a role that gets the best out of him, which is lead designer, technical director, whatever you want to call it. Chief technical officer, again, whatever you want to call the role, that is what is best for Adrian Newey. And again, for Bonotto, what would be best for him is a chief designer, chief technical officer, technical director role, rather than a team principal role. And at the end of the day, I mean, that was a big criticism for me for Ferrari as to why they, during that part of their history, when they had Bonotto as team boss, that was a big reason for me why Ferrari were not able to realise their potential. Because at the end of the day, if you're not hiring the best personnel for the best roles, you're not going to perform as well. And I mean, this is just life in general. But every role you have in a business, you have to hire the best person for that role. And Bonotto was a clear indication that Ferrari, with the way they were organising their team, that he was not the best person they could find in the world for that role. And Alpine, I think, would probably be worse off having him as a team boss. But again, as a technical director, I'm all for it, because he's definitely proven that he's, very good in that type of situation. But let's find some other comments here if I can. Nib saying in chat, Toto apparently said it to one of the Sky kids. Yeah, because Sky have had these young kids part of their broadcast, and apparently Toto Wolff whispered to one of them that Hamilton was, they were about to sign Hamilton up for another 2 years, but he couldn't officially announce it yet, which I'm still not going to believe because, the kid and Toto could have easily been lying. And until I actually see the announcement, I'm not going to actually believe it. But, yeah. Nibs saying quickly check the DM. Let me just check. Martin Whitmarsh's arrival as Group CEO of Aston Martin was clearly a factor in Otmar Safnauer's exit. Safnauer said, once it became clear the management structure was going to be such, I didn't have the influence I thought I should have with Martin coming in. They made it very clear to me the responsibilities I used to have before were never given back. Once I learned that, then it was really time to look elsewhere. It was at the last race in Abu Dhabi. I was told, you used to be able to run the team, but you're not running it anymore. I had a contract. I had no reason to leave. Had the responsibilities not been taken away from me, I would have stayed. So yeah, essentially it was a mutual parting of the ways rather than Aston Martin letting him go. But yeah, like I said, I think absolutely a team like a Williams or a Haas would wouldn't be that bad taking him on. He's definitely still got quite a lot to offer in Formula One, and of course is very experienced, and experience really does help. Brabham says, not that hard, drop Ocon and keep both Piastri and Alonso. Thing is, it's not as simple as that, because Esteban Ocon last year, and I do agree, Ocon is not as good as Piastri or Alonso, but Ocon last year performed well enough to keep his seat, and really, and we have seen in Formula One, it is actually best for your team for having continuity, that if the drivers you currently have are performing still well enough to keep their seats, then you are better off keeping them in, or keeping them at the team, rather than getting rid of them. So I don't think it was a wrong decision to keep Esteban Ocon, even though Alonso and Piastri are better than him. Because at the time, obviously, we didn't know how Piastri was going to perform in Formula One. But, by the way, the track, mostly now covered in sunshine at Spa. So I would imagine, yeah, and on the Mercedes there of George Russell, which is now sat at the exit of the pit lane waiting for the light to go green. Still quite a few minutes away from that happening. He's on intermediate tyres. So if it doesn't rain again, we will probably get dry running, even in Q1. As this track looks like it's drying out quite quickly. Dane, why do you fully blame Binotto, and Aki Ueda also has to be blamed as well on the guy who created the Ferrari car? You must not have been watching my channel that long if you don't think I've been critical of Inaki Ueda. I've been severely critical of Inaki Ueda all the way back since 2000 and even 18, I think, on this channel, never mind 2019. Thankfully, Rueda is not the strategist anymore. Ravin Jain is the strategist for Ferrari, and their strategy this year has definitely been better in terms of the decision-making process. The decisions made have been a lot better. They're still not perfect, no team is, but they are better in that area than they were before. Yeah, I've never only blamed Binotto. He's not the only person to blame for why the Ferrari of 2022 and even before then, why they failed to deliver on the potential they had. But, you know, with the car that was created, Binotto had a massive helping in that, because Binotto was not just the team principal, he also had quite a bit of influence still on the technical direction of the team. So he is also responsible for that as well. As we are about 5 minutes away from the start of qualifying, and yeah, the weather looks so much better now. So it should be, really, once we get properly going, it should be pretty much a dry-ish session. And just going to quickly have another look to see if there is any other news that I can bring you guys. And no, can't find anything. But I will just quickly have one final check of the weather forecast just to see what the radar is looking like. And let me just look. And for Spa, there is still rain in the area, so there is still a pretty good chance of rain. Still a 50-50 really as to whether it's going to rain, and you can see on the broadcast, and they're actually showing the weather radar now on the broadcast, and there is still quite a bit of rain in the area, still some dark clouds around. So the chance of rain is still good, but it looks like the worst of the rain has passed, which is good to see. So if we do get more showers, it'll probably be lighter showers than what we've seen so far today. But right, I'll read out a couple more comments and then we'll get into this session. Mickey, if it really doesn't rain again, will we see dry tyres? Yep, absolutely. I think if it doesn't rain for the rest of the session, we'll see dry tyres probably in Q1. Because the track, I mean, it's not dry yet, but it will dry out pretty quickly. And Sparky Pete saying Ocon is so underrated. He beat out Alonso. You can say bad luck, but maybe Ocon put less stress on the car than Alonso, which maybe why he had more problems. Yeah, I'm not sure that's much of a reason why Ocon had less issues than Alonso. But Fernando was better than Ocon in 2022, but Ocon was still quite close to Fernando during the season. And obviously on qualifying pace, Esteban did a very good job against Fernando. So yeah, Esteban absolutely deserved to keep his seat. It's just Alpine completely fucked up who to have him alongside. I mean, Pierre Gasly's not a bad teammate. Gasly is a very good driver, but he's not as good as Piastri or, of course, Fernando Alonso. And their indecision and hesitation is what led to that all happening. Anyway, let me finish up this poll in the live chat. And of course, I asked you guys in a wet qualifying at Spa today who will take pole position for the 2023 Belgian Grand Prix. And you guys voted for Max Verstappen with 51% of the vote, 145 votes in total. Second, Lewis Hamilton. Third, Lando Norris. And fourth, Charles Leclerc. Let's get into just one final thing before we get into qualifying. A reminder of the championship standings coming into this session and this weekend. Max Verstappen, 110 points clear of Sergio Perez. Fernando Alonso in third, only 6 points clear of Lewis Hamilton. I'd be surprised if he kept third in the championship, to be honest, given how quick the Mercedes is compared to the Aston Martin. And then you've got George Russell in fifth, just ahead of Carlos Sainz sixth, with Leclerc seventh, Lando Norris up to eighth, and he will definitely be making progress very quickly from there. Lance Stroll in ninth, and Esteban Ocon in P10. And on the constructor side, Red Bull massively clear of Mercedes out in the lead. Mercedes comfortably clear of Aston Martin, 39 points clear to be or in fact, of Aston Martin, who are just 17 points clear of Ferrari in the battle for third. McLaren in fifth, only 80 points behind the Ferrari team. And if they're going to have a big weekend this weekend, they'll definitely close that gap even further. Alpine are in sixth, with Williams in seventh, Haas eighth, Alfa Romeo ninth, and AlphaTauri in P10. Well, let's now get into the session. The session will be starting in the next few seconds. I will sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark. Of course, Q1 an 18-minute long session. And let me just quickly get out the dotted line to illustrate where the cutoff zone is. And let me just readjust this quickly. And there you go. And actually, I put it in the wrong position, and it's a bit too big. Well, so let me do that instead. And there you go. So yeah, anyone below that dotted line, of course, at the end of Q1 will be out of the session, as the session has now begun. Cars out on track. And I'll sync up the timer in about 10 seconds time. As Ferrari about to release their cars. And let me get the timer on screen right now. There's 17 minutes to go in Q1. And let's see what goes down here at Spa, as looks like everyone on track is on a set of intermediate tyres, which is definitely the tyre to start on. But this track should dry out pretty quickly, as long as it stays dry, of course. As George Russell is the first man out on the track. Just to clarify as well, the pictures you'll be seeing on screen on my end will be from the Hungarian Grand Prix. Of course, I was unable to get pictures from the Grand Prix weekend so far because I started my stream so soon after the first practice session. So yeah, for later in the weekend, of course, I will have the up-to-date pictures. As the two Mercedes are actually the first cars on track. And they will be the first to start their laps. There's a lot of work going on to Logan Sargent's car, who of course had a bit of a big crash in practice one, aquaplaned and went into the barriers at Les Combes. We'll see if he gets out or not. Maybe he won't, as it doesn't look like, to be honest, he will get out for this session at all. As Russell begins his lap, now coming through Eau Rouge and going pretty fast through Eau Rouge. That was quite impressive. And now he is flying down the Kemmel Straight and completes the first sector. And a quick time on intermediate tyres will be, what, a 152, 153, I reckon. So yeah, we'll see what these drivers can do. If they start getting like close to a 1 minute 49, 1 minute 48, something like that, then I can see teams probably going for a set of dry tyres. But let's see how they get on. As Russell through Pouhon, car looks absolutely fine, bolted to the racetrack. As Russell has done a faster first sector so far compared to Hamilton. In the wet, though, really the sector that matters is the middle sector, because there are so many challenging corners. As Russell completes the middle sector. And car looks absolutely fine so far. Let's see what Lewis Hamilton's middle sector is like. And it is a much quicker middle sector, I think, compared to Russell. As now, Russell braking hard for the bus stop chicane. Couple cars in his way, but they get out of the way nicely. And those cars being the two Ferraris and a Red Bull. As Russell comes to the line and there's a 2 minute 2.3. But the track will improve in terms of lap time quite a bit during this session. That's not much quicker than what they did in practice 1. As Lewis Hamilton now goes quickest for Mercedes on a 1 minute 2.2. Valtteri Bottas up to 3rd. Here comes Lando Norris, who has done a purple middle sector, as Alex Albon has gone up to 3rd ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And Lando Norris now goes quickest, 0.4 of a second quicker than Hamilton. So a 2 minute 1.8, I think that will be. And it is. Fernando Alonso goes up to 4th place for Aston Martin. And there's a replay of Norris into the bus stop again. In wet conditions a couple years ago, he looked like he was on course for pole position, so watch out for him today. As a slow-mo there of a lot of smoke coming out of the rear left brake duct by the looks of it. Hopefully that's not an issue, as Russell on another lap and has done a purple first sector, as Piastri is up to 5th place. And then you've got Albon 6th, Stroll up in 7th position. And then Magnussen up to 8th, with Hülkenberg in P9. So let me just update that quickly. And actually, the order has already moved around quite a bit. I'll update the other positions in a moment, as George Russell goes quickest by about 0.4 of a second, and as a 2 minute 1.4, as I think Lewis Hamilton goes back to 2nd place. Here's a replay of Magnussen having a lap time deleted for going over the white line on the exit Puon. And yeah, that was obviously the right decision, as Max Verstappen goes 2nd with his first lap of the session. And then it's Hamilton 3rd, Norris 4th, Perez is up to 5th place. And then you've got Alonso 6th, Piastri 7th, Albon 8th, Carlos Sainz is up to P9. And then it's Valtteri Bottas in P10. So that's your top 10 for the minute. And then you've got Ocon in 11th. And then as incident involving Verstappen and Albon noted for impeding. We'll see if there's any replay of that. Hülkenberg 13th, Ricciardo in 14th, Tsunoda in 15th. Not anymore, because Zhou Guanyu has gone up to 11th position. And Kevin Magnussen has gone up to 8th place, as Hülkenberg goes up to 10th. So in the drop zone at the minute, it is Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Leclerc, Gasly and Sargent. That is a replay of Lando Norris at the exit of the second Stavolo corner. Pretty sure it is. And getting a bit of oversteer, or just carried a bit too much throttle through the puddle there and had quite a big moment, and he's lucky he didn't end up in the barriers. So yeah, as Carlos Sainz goes quickest by 0.9 of a second over Oscar Piastri. So Sainz in P1, Max Verstappen is up to P2. And then you've got, Piastri up to 3rd, as Norris had that time deleted where he went off the track. As Alex Albon, I think just goes up to P11. Pierre Gasly has gone 9th, who's out of the drop zone now. Esteban Ocon is up to 10th. And then you've got Albon in 11th. Charles Leclerc is up to 5th place. The Ferrari looking a lot better now. Now they've got their laps in. Of course, as it gets drier, they should, theoretically, Ferrari get quicker. And just saw the end of that replay of that possible impeding with Verstappen and Albon. Didn't really see enough of it, to be honest. Not sure if Verstappen will actually get in trouble for that. But again, I will admit I didn't see enough of it. As somebody else has improved. It is Fernando Alonso, who is now up to 3rd. So you got them Piastri 4th, Russell 5th, Leclerc 6th, Hamilton 7th, Norris 8th. Stroll is up to 9th in the 2nd Aston Martin. Sergio Perez 10th, and then Gasly, Ocon, Albon, Magnussen, Hülkenberg. And in the drop zone, the 2 Alfa Romeos of Bottas and Zhou, the 2 AlphaTauris of Ricciardo and Tsunoda, and Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent, by the way, is out on track, which is great to see, as Daniel Ricciardo, former Belgian Grand Prix winner. Coming into the bus stop, runs a bit wide, but that's not as bad of a thing in the wet. Because obviously the best line in the wet is quite a bit different, as Ricciardo goes up to P12. His teammate, though, Yuki Tsunoda, has gone up to 7th place. So 7th for Tsunoda, 12th for Ricciardo. So now both Haas's and both Alfa Romeos are in the drop zone, along with the Williams of Sargent, as Lando Norris comes back into the pit lane. So your top 10 is Sainz, Verstappen, Alonso, Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Norris, and Stroll. As they do a racing pit stop, essentially, there at McLaren. We're having a look around to see if there's any damage to the underbody of the McLaren. I think the mechanic there might have said we need to get him back into the garage, which isn't good, because if Lando can't get back out, he'll be knocked out of this session, because the track will improve with its lap time that much. As Valtteri Bottas, who has been on the podium here, I think a couple times, it's actually more than a couple times. He's been on the podium here in 3 different races, I think. 2014, and then 2019 and 2020. Is beginning the middle sector of a new lap, as Mercedes telling Russell will be very tight on time for a fast, slow, fast. And Russell saying, tell Lewis to put his foot down then. Clearly, they're doing their runs in formation, as Lewis Hamilton has just started his new flying lap, and so has Russell. Lando Norris, by the way, back out on track, so clearly his car is fine. No issues with him. But really, this session, if it doesn't rain again, is all going to be about, as Leclerc goes up to 3rd, it's all going to be about who does their best lap, or who does their last lap the latest out of anyone. Because the last man to cross the line, as Carlos Sainz goes a lot quicker now onto a 1:59.8, Logan Sargent goes up to 16th place. If you do your lap at the latest possible time, you will end up in a very good position. And you know, if you're a front running team and you do your best lap in Q1 a bit too early, like we saw with Sergio Perez back at Silverstone, you will be knocked out in Q1. But Max Verstappen now quickest on a 1:58.9. You can really see now the track really starting to improve, as Sergio Perez improves up to 3rd in the 2nd Red Bull. No further investigation, by the way, for Verstappen and Albon, as I thought. Leclerc is 4th, and then it's Alonso 5th. Bottas has improved all the way up to 6th place. And then the rest of the top 10, Piastri was in 7th. He's now up to 2nd. And then you've got Russell 8th, Tsunoda 9th, Hamilton 10th. Not anymore, because Zhou Guanyu is up to 7th place. And then you've got Tsunoda down to 11th as George Russell has now improved up to 4th. Lewis Hamilton now quickest by about 1/10 of a second over Max Verstappen. So Hamilton quickest, Russell in P4. Pierre Gasly has just improved up to 7th place for Alpine. Not sure if that's going to be good enough, given we've still got just under 3 minutes to go. Esteban Ocon comes out of the drop zone and is up to 5th. So your top 10, Hamilton, Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, Ocon, Sainz, Perez, Gasly, Leclerc, Alonso. And then you've got Zhou, Bottas, Tsunoda, Norris and Stroll between 11th and 15th. And in the drop zone, Ricciardo, Albon, Sargent, Magnussen and Hülkenberg. Carlos Sainz, by the way, has just pitted. Let's hope it's for a racing pit stop, because if he was to come back into the garage, he'll be in big trouble. As Lando Norris gets a bit wide through the entry of the bus stop, but still gets a decent run. Where does he go? He only goes up to 8th. He'll have to do another lap to absolutely make sure of his place in Q2. And maybe is going for another lap now. But we've got many drivers out there. On an out lap is a replay of Kevin Magnussen. I assume it's going to be an unsafe release. And yes, it is. And what's this? I don't understand what we're watching. As, he hit something on the top of the pit gantry they have. Or it came loose somehow. Just a small issue there for Haas. Talking of Kevin Magnussen, though, who is currently in 19th, he is on a better lap. And he's done a very good middle sector, which will probably put him in, I don't know, 11th, 12th place, something like that. Alex Albon has not done really that great of a middle sector. I mean, it's a lot quicker than Stroll in 15th, but needs to be a lot more of a gain on Stroll to securely get him into Q2 as we enter the final 35 seconds. Kevin Magnussen goes up to 9th with a purple final sector. Magnussen up to 9th. Alex Albon comes to the line. 11th only. I think Albon is in big trouble in that Williams. As here is Yuki Tsunoda, who's just coming through the final corner of the middle sector, the first Stavolo corner. And it's a good middle sector, but whether it'll be a good enough final sector to see him through, we'll have to see. As Tsunoda now through Blanchimont, as Sergio Perez goes up to 2nd. The checkered flag has now fallen. These are the final laps. As Tsunoda through the bus stop to the line. Is he into Q2? Oh, yes, he is. He's up to 4th place. Is Tsunoda. What a brilliant final sector and lap overall. Valtteri Bottas out of the drop zone and up to 6th place. That theoretically should be good enough. Max Verstappen goes quickest on a 1:58.5. Here comes Ricciardo, who goes up to 6th place. Will that be good enough? I would imagine so. Ricciardo up to 6th. And Lance Stroll up to P10. Not sure that's going to be good enough for Stroll. So in the drop zone, Leclerc Alonso, Zhou, Ricciardo's had his time deleted. Ricciardo is out in Q1 and is probably going to end up at the very back of the field. And here comes Alonso, who goes up to second place. Lewis Hamilton now goes second. So Alonso, in reality, is in third. As Leclerc in the drop zone, can he find his way out? He has a good run through the bus stop chicane as Esteban Ocon, I think, just improved, and Leclerc goes quickest for Ferrari. Brilliant lap at the very end of the session. So Leclerc goes quickest. And then it is Carlos Sainz up to third. So brilliant laps by the Ferrari drivers at the very end of the session. And in the drop zone, it is now Albon, Zhou, Sargent, Ricciardo, Hülkenberg. So let me get the rest of the order correct. So Q1, guys, is over. Let's go through the drivers who are through to Q2. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and then Oscar Piastri in 6th, Sergio Perez 7th, George Russell in 8th, Yuki Tsunoda 9th, Valtteri Bottas 10th, Pierre Gasly 11th, Esteban Ocon 12th, Lance Stroll 13th, Lando Norris 14th. Lando was a bit lucky there to make it through to Q2, and Kevin Magnussen 15th, finally out qualifying his teammate for the first time in a while, meaning that knocked out in Q1 Alexander Albon, Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Daniel Ricciardo, and Nico Hülkenberg. And Q2 will be underway in a couple minutes' time. Yeah, such a shame Ricciardo had that lap time deletion, because that lap was definitely good enough to get him into Q2. Williams, disappointing but not surprising, given that it was a wet session. They need it to be dry, really, to show their proper pace around this track. Hülkenberg, though, very disappointing. And a very disappointing performance as well from Zhou in the Alfa Romeo. Only 17th on the grid. I will say, though, that Logan Sargent, I thought, had a decent performance there, given how far behind he's been compared to his teammate a lot of the time. And Williams certainly will make progress tomorrow. Because, oh, not tomorrow, sorry, on Sunday when it's dry. Because in the dry, they should have a car definitely quick enough to contend for a point. Just trying to see if there's any news on Twitter I can bring you guys. And no, can't see. Yeah, can't see anything at the moment. But yeah. For Q2, given the track conditions, I think definitely we are going to see some surprises. Lance Stroll definitely is a contender to be knocked out of the session. Lando Norris did not look that great, I've got to say, in Q1 compared to his teammate who was up in 6th. Yeah, Lando never really got to grips in that first session, and I'm hoping that Lando has not damaged his floor from running wide at the second Stavolo, because if he has, that is going to hamper him a lot through this session, when Lando really should be McLaren's quickest driver this weekend, as that's a replay of Alex Albon, why he ended up in 16th. He ran too wide at the hairpin before the left-hand no-name corner. Can't remember what the name of the corner is. But yeah, ran too wide, just braked too late in Albon. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how he progresses on Sunday. So watch out for Williams on Sunday afternoon. And one thing I will do quickly, get the second dotted line out. Let me just do that quick. And get it put in place. And of course, at the end of Q2, whoever's in between those two dotted lines will be out of the session and will miss out on the top 10 shootout. Which, to be honest, given the track conditions, really anybody out of the front-running teams could get pole position. Because it's not necessarily, with the track improving the way it is, it's not necessarily about who has the fastest car. It's about producing the lap at the absolute best time possible. And if you can do that, you're going to have a great day. Possibly a great weekend. As the two Mercedes are the first two cars on track once again. Looks a lot drier on the Kemmel Straight. But it's still too wet, I would say, for the moment, for dry tyres. But if it does stay dry, I can still see teams risking dry tyres later on. Because the gain, obviously, around a track like this so long would be massive. As there you go. Timer on screen now. 14 minutes to go in Q2 as the Red Bull of, I think that's Max Verstappen, towards the rear of the field is coming out on track. Alex Albon will be investigated after the session for rejoining the track unsafely at turn 9. So maybe that's when he went off at the hairpin there. Maybe he just came back on in front of someone in a dangerous manner. We'll have to see how that plays out. But still, my bet for pole position is Max Verstappen. As he is obviously incredible in these conditions. He is incredible around this racetrack, and the Red Bull car has an incredible amount of grip. As Oscar Piastri just told his team that they're not far away from slick tyres, which will be music to the ears of certain teams. Not necessarily McLaren, but definitely Ferrari will be very pleased to hear about that. Even Red Bull, to be honest, because the rain does add another element that, you know, can cause them to have a bit of a trickier weekend. As Lewis Hamilton begins his first lap of Q2. Nearly flat out through Eau Rouge. Mercedes car very well balanced, I have to say, through there. And Hamilton completing the first sector. And the best time in Q1 was a 1:58.5. So that's what to look out for in terms of track improvement. And yeah, there are some corners in the middle sector that look like you could maybe get through them on a dry tyre. But for the overall lap, it looks like it's still a bit too wet. But we are not far away from dry conditions, that is for sure. As Hamilton already through Pouon, now into the Fania chicane. A very exciting part of the track. And in the dry, you can really throw the car into the corners there. It's such a thrill for the drivers going through there. As he now exits the first Stavolo. And his teammate behind him actually on a slightly quicker lap at the minute. Of course, Russell has access to only slightly better track conditions. As Oscar Piastri on a lap as well. But here comes Lewis Hamilton. Of course, he's taken pole position here many times, and also many times in the wet. 2013, 2018 as well. as he does go quickest on a 1:58.0. George Russell goes second, a couple tenths of a second slower, so not a great final sector as Valtteri Bottas goes quickest on a 1:57.6. And Kevin Magnussen now quickest on a 1:57.4. Yeah, track really starting to improve. As Oscar Piastri goes a second quicker on a 1:56.3. The Piastri quickest for McLaren. Alonso only goes third, which is quite disappointing given the track improvement. As Esteban Ocon, who's had some good running here in the wet before, goes second. Of course, qualified third here in the wet for Racing Point back in 2018. Sergio Perez, quickest now by about 4/10 of a second. Leclerc is up to second. And, hold on. Yeah, Leclerc up to P2, if I can bloody do it. As Max Verstappen now goes quickest by 4.5 of a second. Carlos Sainz only goes 9th. Not a good first run there for the Spaniard. As Pierre Gasly goes up to 6th. So a good first run there for the two Alpines. Yuki Tsunoda, very good lap from him, up to 7th place. And that is pretty much everyone. Lando Norris has now started his first. Really, it should be for impeding. As Russell there. Probably a bit miffed as to what Lewis Hamilton was doing there through Eau Rouge, going off the track a bit. But Mercedes will, of course, have to improve their laps because they're not in a great position right now. But yeah, your top 10, Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Piastri, Ocon, Gasly, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Alonso, and Bottas. So in the drop zone, it is Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, the two Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll, and the McLaren of Lando Norris. Norris, though, again, has not done a lap time yet, but he is on a lap at the minute. The best lap so far, a 1:55.5, which is already 3 seconds quicker than they went in Q1. So, yeah, track improving a lot. This lap, though, from Lando, not very quick. Nearly 3 seconds slower than Verstappen. After the first two sectors. Not sure if that's because of traffic, but yeah. This has not been a quick lap at all for Lando Norris. I do wonder whether he's damaged the floor of his car running off the track. As Lando comes back into the pits. And yeah, I do get that suspicion that he might have some damage to his car. Of course, for the rest of the weekend, he'll be able to fix that. Doesn't have to take that through the rest of the weekend. But for this session, that is definitely an issue. As people now going out on soft compound tyres. So they are going to go for it, the teams. And go for the risk. But there is, for certain teams, it is worth the risk. Especially, you know, Bottas and the Alfa Romeo. The Alpines, the AlphaTauri of Tsunoda, the Haas of Magnussen, as incident involving Hamilton and Russell noted for rejoining the track unsafely. And that would have been Hamilton, the person who is the accused in that incident. I think Hamilton, I'm not sure if he'll get a penalty for that, but I think he might get a stern warning for what he was doing. It was quite unusual. It's like he forgot that anyone else was out on the racetrack with him. As here comes Valtteri Bottas. He will be the first man to do a lap of the entire day on dry tyres, never mind in this qualifying session. He tries to apply power out of turn 1. Traction obviously difficult, given the track is still quite damp in areas. Now through Eau Rouge. And he gets through. Still a bit damp, though, so he can't go flat through there. Bottas, let's see what his first sector time is like. And it is not very quick. But, you know, as they build the heat up in those tyres, it will get better. And they will find the lap time. And if he can find heat in this middle sector, heat in those tyres, then there's a good chance he can go quicker through the middle sector than he did before. But the car visibly still looks a bit difficult to drive, so it's going to be difficult. But we're at that point where it's worth the risk, because the Red Bull there locking up into turn 1. Not sure what Red Bull that was. And here comes the Mercedes of George Russell, currently down in 13th place and running very wide through turn 1 and getting quite a bit of oversteer on the exit as well. Horrible start to the lap. It really, yeah, for the next minute or so, it's about building the temperature in the tyres. But if it does stay dry, which it looks like it's going to because the track is coated in sunshine, the last man to cross the line will be will have a massive advantage in this session, because they'll have access to the most amount of grip out there if they can find improvement on these dry tyres. So, yeah, this is going to be a very exciting final 3.5 minutes of Q2. Do not leave these final 3.5 minutes, because we could see some amazing surprises. As Russell flying through Pouhon, and looked pretty good through there on those soft tyres. Definitely better than Bottas, but still tentative he's having to be. As the Alpine there, he's got a broken front wing. It's Esteban Ocon. He's broken the end plate, and he's going to have to come in for a new front wing. So they're going to have to do... Oh, debris coming off it. Slow down, Esteban. Slow down. Slow down. Because that front wing is close to going under his front tyres. And yet, there was a couple bits of debris put out on track. I'm not sure if it's actually on the track or off the track, but he needs to slow down because that front wing was going to tuck under his front tyres very quickly. And he ran wide at the left-hand no-name corner and hit the barrier and might have damaged his suspension as well. That is very costly. That might cost Ocon getting through to Q3. As here is Lance Stroll, who presumably was behind Ocon when he made that mistake. Yes, he was. And then had to go a bit into the wet part of the track to get past him. And, well, so far we've not seen any lap time improvement on the dry tyres. Oscar Piastri, though, is starting to improve. He's just done a purple middle sector. Unfortunately, he's got traffic of Yuki Tsunoda, so this isn't gonna be, and yeah, he's backed off. And I actually think that's a good decision from Piastri, because you don't want to be having a bad moment through there, then costing yourself doing a final lap on those tyres. So here we go. We're going to get some big improvements now, guys. Buckle in. As Lewis Hamilton comes out of the final corner. Where does he go? Up to 4th place with a purple final sector. But he's got to keep pushing. Everyone has got to keep pushing until the session is officially done. As Hamilton and Russell rejoining the track unsafely. An incident will be investigated after the session. Lance Stroll is up to 3rd place. As Sergio Perez goes quickest on a 1:55.1. Yep, Hamilton now in 5th place. As here comes George Russell, who goes quickest by 0.2 of a second. So Russell quickest for Mercedes, but that is going to easily change around and already has. Lando Norris now quickest for McLaren, with the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz in second. So the people occupying the drop zone is changing all the time. As the checkered flag now falls, this is the final laps as Verstappen still only in 5th place. And then you've got Gasly now up to 6th. And then Stroll in 7th. Charles Leclerc 8th. Hamilton 9th. Piastri 10th. Valtteri Bottas with his final lap improves up to 3rd. So Bottas up into the top 10 for now. Can Hamilton get himself into the top 10 as Yuki Tsunoda goes quickest for AlphaTauri? What a final lap by the Japanese star. Piastri now goes quickest with Hamilton in 2nd. Let me just quickly update that. And, yep, Tsunoda 3rd. Lance Stroll now goes 2nd. I think Lewis Hamilton, guys, might be at risk here because there's a lot of people still to improve. Sergio Perez only goes 4th. As in the drop zone, Gasly, Leclerc, Ocon, Magnussen, Alonso. Alonso, though, now up to 5th place for Aston Martin. And Lando Norris is up to 3rd, as here comes the world champion Max Verstappen through the final corner. Where will he go as Carlos Sainz is up to 2nd? Max Verstappen only goes 9th. He's at serious risk here as Leclerc goes 3rd. Can Magnussen get to the top 10? No, only P12. Gasly now goes P12. Max Verstappen has escaped by the skin of his teeth. Let me just quickly go through this final order. So, wow. Piastri makes it. So let me just go through who is through to Q3. Oscar Piastri quickest from Sainz 2nd. Leclerc 3rd. Stroll 4th. Norris 5th. Hamilton 6th. Perez 7th. Alonso not in 8th. Russell up to 8th. Alonso 9th. And Max Verstappen by quite a bit of lap time. 4.5 tenths of a second, or 3.5 tenths of a second rather, is into Q3, but that was cutting it close for Red Bull. So Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, and Max Verstappen are in to Q3. But let me, guys, just confirm. Let me just confirm what the order was in the drop zone. So knocked out in Q2, guys, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, Valtteri Bottas, and Esteban Ocon. And Q3, they've just said, the FIA, Q3, the start of it will be delayed. The reason that is probably to pick up a couple bits of debris that are out on track from Ocon's excursion off the racetrack. Very poor from Ocon, making that mistake at such a critical point. Alpine, terrible result, 12th and 15th. They may as well give up for the weekend because there's nothing really for them to fight for. Yeah, Piastri, what a brilliant job to end up P1. What a brilliant day he is having. Once again, quicker than Lando Norris. Great for Ferrari, of course. I will say, a fantastic session for Aston Martin to get both cars into Q3. That is quite a bit better than I expected. Both Mercedes, thankfully, into Q3. Obviously, Norris in. Both Red Bulls in. So we've got what? Both Red Bulls, both McLarens, both Ferraris, both Mercedes and both Aston Martins into Q3. And then obviously they're the top 5 teams in Formula 1. But one driver I would like to shout out, despite him getting knocked out in Q2, is Yuki Tsunoda. 11th place. What a qualifying for him. And I think he's got a decent chance, not a great chance, but a decent chance of maybe getting his first points finish since, when would it be? First points finish since probably, I think, Australia earlier this season. So yeah, brilliant job by Tsunoda, despite getting knocked out. Right, let's see what you guys have to say. Actually, hold on a minute. Leclerc complaining about a driver, saying, what a bleep. Then loads of other words were said. Not sure who that car was. Looked like a Mercedes, to be honest. And yeah, it is now time for Q3. Just want to say quickly before we get into Q3, to anyone new watching, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do qualifying and race watch-alongs for every Grand Prix. And for everybody watching right now, smash that like button. We're currently on 46 likes. Let's try and get well over 50 by the end of the session, which will be in the next few minutes or so. As it was actually Magnussen in the Haas, and that incident at turn 10 between Magnussen and Leclerc has been noted for impeding. So we'll see whether Magnussen is given a penalty or not. But yeah, weather conditions at Spa looking very good. Again, the reason the start Q3 delayed is to pick up a couple loose bits of debris, as clearly there is damage to the floor of Lando Norris's car, because they're getting the tape out to try and keep the thing together, keep it in its most aerodynamically efficient manner. But again, if you're a McLaren fan, don't worry, because that won't affect him necessarily going for the rest of the weekend, because I'm pretty sure under the FIA Parc Ferme rules that if they can prove that there is substantial damage there, they'll be able to repair the damage to the floor, as they're just showing on Sky F1 why Verstappen was not very quick there. And it's because he had a big moment at the no-name left-hander before Puon, and did touch the gravel a bit. That's why Verstappen was so slow. Probably cost him half a second. And then obviously a replay of Ocon. Yeah, poor mistake. And obviously wasn't able to get back out again. And that's what cost him getting through to Q3. Both Alpines start outside of the top 10 yet again. And I'll let you know when Q3 will be underway. And they've just actually let us know Q3 will start in 4 to 5 minutes from now. So not too long to wait until the start of the session. Of course, they'll be out there on dry tyres. But you never know with the weather. Rain is, as we know at Spa, it's never too far away. But yeah, I'll get the timer obviously on screen once the session gets going. 12-minute long session, and I'll sync it up at the 11-minute mark. Let me see if I can find any news on Twitter quickly whilst we wait. So the start of Q3 officially delayed to sweep the gravel from the track at the exit of turn 9. And yeah, quite a bit of that obviously kicked up. Let me see if I can find anything else. And no, don't think I can. Yeah, we wait until the session gets going. But let me know in the chat, guys. Who is your bet for pole position? Is it still Verstappen? Or a Hamilton? Leclerc? Or are you going to go for a surprise in Norris, Piastri, Alonso? Even, you never know. Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll. You just never know with these conditions. Because again, with the track improving all the time, it's really about producing your lap at the best possible time when the track grip is at its best. And that's what really it comes down to. But yeah, we're about, I don't know, 2.5 minutes, I'd say, away from the start of Q3. And still, they're just doing some quick fixes to the McLaren floor. But yeah, I would imagine they'll be able to try and properly fix that for tomorrow and Sunday. And before we get into the session, actually, a quick reminder of my next 2 pieces of content on the channel. So tomorrow, as long as it's not too heavy rain and I actually think we're going to get running in tomorrow, I will be live from 12:30 PM UK time for the F2 sprint race watch along, and then a preview and watch along for the F1 sprint race. Yeah, live from 12:30 PM UK time until 4:30 PM. And then on Sunday, I'll be live from 12 PM UK time, 2 hours for the race preview and race watch along, and live all the way until 4 PM. And yeah, the race on Sunday is looking dry. Like I said, though, for tomorrow's stream, if I get up and watch the sprint shootout and it turns out it's way too wet to see really serious running today, then I probably won't bother streaming tomorrow. But I will hold off on deciding on that until tomorrow. Hopefully, the weather is not as bad as forecast in terms of how much rain we're going to get. The level, the intensity of the rain is not necessarily going to be apocalyptic tomorrow, but the amount of rain we're going to get, yeah, it could be a very long day tomorrow. The session, I think, is about to start. And we will find out who will start on pole position for the 2023 edition of the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. Mexican fans in the grandstand, good to see. Obviously, compared to the homeland, it'll be incredibly cold. It's the air temperature about 20 degrees. 20 degrees Celsius, which is about what it is where I'm at. And yeah, that's not really that warm or hot for summer. As the McLaren of Piastri is about to be released from his garage as the session officially has begun. And I will get the timer on screen in 50 seconds time. Still, skies look pretty bright, and I would be surprised if we got a rain shower in these final few minutes. But yeah, well, saying that, there is behind turn 1, beyond the grandstand at turn 1, there is some dark clouds forming, so you never know. It is Spa at the end of the day. But yeah, really, who can produce their best lap at the absolute right time? This is what Q3 is going to be about. As some of the cars now venturing onto the track. And I'll get the timer on screen in a few seconds. And there you go. 11 minutes to go in qualifying. Let's find out who will start Sunday's race on pole position. That's a very nice overhead cam of turn 1 there. Showing the cars exiting the pit lane as Lando Norris getting a bit of oversteer through Leclerc on this outlap. Obviously, he's trying to find out where the limit of grip is because the track would have improved in grip since the end of Q2. So, yeah, this is vital understanding for the drivers. Turn 10 looks a lot better. The grip at that corner. But if Lando does indeed have damage to his car, then really, for McLaren, it's Oscar Piastri we need to be watching out for. As we're now looking at the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. The unluckiest man at the Belgian Grand Prix. He's had so many reliability issues for other teams here. I think there was 2 races here where he didn't even get to start the race. So we'll be hoping that he can do what he did last year and, well, start the race on pole, which he did last year, and finish on the podium. That'd be a great weekend for Carlos Sainz. As Lando Norris begins his first attempt at pole position at Spa Francorchamps. As Lance Stroll has started a lap ahead of him, so has Fernando Alonso. Now Piastri starts his lap. And Norris, will he go flat through Eau Rouge? Yes, he was. He was flat through Eau Rouge. Very impressive levels of downforce there on the McLaren. As Norris now completing the first sector. Decent first sector. Nothing special. Piastri, though, goes a 1/10 of a second quicker. As Norris now through turn 8. It's actually turn 9 where Ocon crashed, not turn 10. And yeah, grip through turn 9 a lot better. Now into Puon. And yeah, McLaren looking not quite on rails, but very well handled for the track. As Norris completing the Fagnes chicane, now into Stavolo. As Lando Norris does a purple middle sector, so it's quicker in the middle sector than the 2 Aston Martins, which is good at least for him, even if he does have damage. And let's see what these first laps are like. As here comes Fernando Alonso, who goes quickest. He is the first man to do a lap. So Fernando Alonso quickest. As Lance Stroll goes second. Lando Norris now goes quickest on a 1:48.7. That is a massive improvement. And Piastri goes even quicker on a 1:48.5. 0.2 of a second quicker than Norris. As Lewis Hamilton, only 4th, splitting the Aston Martins. Russell only up to 6th. As Max Verstappen now goes quickest by 4.5 and lays down a solid marker. As here comes Leclerc, who now goes quickest himself. What a brilliant final sector from Charles Leclerc. And he's on provisional pole here at Spa. Sergio Perez, only 6th. That's a poor lap. Here comes Carlos Sainz, did a purple first sector. Does a purple final sector, but only goes 3rd. So with 6 minutes and 20 seconds to go, Ferrari, by almost a 1/10.5, are on provisional pole position. Can they secure? Because remember, Max Verstappen has a 5-place grid penalty. At the minute, Ferrari would be locking out the front row for Sunday's race, which would be, well, quite momentous. Ferrari have not locked out the front row of a grid in a long time, it feels like. That the last time was will be early part of 2022. Last time they locked out the front row here at Spa was in 2019, where of course Leclerc got his pole position that day and got his first ever race win in Formula 1. that weekend. Very emotional weekend, of course it was. As Lewis Hamilton and both Mercedes on second and better laps. What does Hamilton do? He goes 6th, but it's still not a great lap, I have to say, from the Mercedes. George Russell, only 9th. Very disappointing from the Mercedes. 6th and 9th. I was expecting a lot more than that. And they are, at best, about a second away from pole position right now, which is alarmingly far off. Where is Mercedes' pace? If they've got any, they need to find it in these final 4 minutes and 45 seconds of qualifying. But at the minute, it is Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Piastri, Norris, Hamilton, Alonso, Perez, Russell, Stroll. With Verstappen's 5th place penalty, though, if the top 10 was to finish this way, it would be, Ferrari front row, Leclerc on pole, Sainz 2nd, Piastri 3rd, Norris 4th, Hamilton 5th, Alonso 6th, and then Verstappen 7th, Perez 8th. So Red Bull would lock out the 4th row of the grid for Sunday's race. And certainly that would make things quite interesting. But yeah, Ferrari looking great. And I told you guys they were praying for dry weather because that's when they'd get to show their true potential. And they've shown it. And they look very good, at least here in qualifying. And yeah, who will claim this pole position? It's still not for certain who will actually claim it because, I mean, the grip of the track is still improving all the time. So if you're a Mercedes, for example, there is still lots of lap time to be found, given that there is still lots of track improvement coming in these final 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So looking great for Ferrari right now, but that does not mean that they are, that their chances of securing pole are that high at the minute, but given how unpredictable this session has been and will probably continue to be these final few minutes. I'm just going to mute myself a minute, guys, just to blow my nose, and I'll be back in a second. Right, so that should be okay for the rest of qualifying at least, as we've got pretty much all the drivers now on an out lap except the two Mercedes and Sergio Perez, but they're now on the track, and so is Max Verstappen as well. So everyone, just over 2 minutes to go in qualifying on an out lap, and one final run to go in qualifying. And at the front of the queue is the Aston Martin. Not sure which one. Probably, I would imagine, maybe Lance Stroll. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But really, you want to be the last car to finish their lap, because again, you'll have the access to the most amount of grip out there on the track. The two Ferraris, I've got to say, are quite high up in the queue. So obviously they will gain lap time, but theoretically not going to gain as much compared to their first lap in Q3 as, say, Mercedes or Red Bull will, or even McLaren. Well, not too far behind them in the queue. As, Lance Stroll it was at the head of the pack. As we enter the final 45 seconds now. As Charles Leclerc starts His final attempt at securing, at the minute, a pole position. Carlos Sainz tries to take it away from him. Can Ferrari secure a front row for Sunday's race? As long as they finish ahead of everyone else except for Verstappen, that's all they need to do. As Carlos Sainz opens the DRS on the Camel Straight. What's the first sector like? It is a very good one. 0.2 of a second up on Charles Leclerc. Everyone is now on their final lap, and the checkered flag now falls. Leclerc did a purple first sector. He's a bit further on this lap. As somebody else has done a purple first sector, probably I think it might have been an Aston Martin that had done that purple first sector, but it's probably been improved upon already by the Red Bulls. As Leclerc, very good middle sector, nearly a second up on his best middle sector. This is looking great for Ferrari. And Sainz looking pretty quick as well. He's not too far away from Leclerc on his lap time so far, as Lance Stroll goes up to 6th. Not sure he'll keep that. As here comes Leclerc through the final chicane as Piastri does the purple middle sector. Leclerc goes 0.9 of a second quicker onto a 1:46.9. Can he keep pole position? Here comes his teammate Carlos Sainz, who goes second. Now, can they protect themselves against the rest? Oscar Piastri, only third. Lando Norris only goes fourth, so Ferrari have outqualified McLaren. Here comes Fernando Alonso, P5 only. Here comes Max Verstappen, though. Oh my goodness. 0.8 of a second quicker than Leclerc, and on pole position as Lewis Hamilton goes up to third place briefly, but now Sergio Perez goes up to third. There's now Perez in P3, Hamilton in P4. Brilliant lap by Hamilton. George Russell only goes 8th. But what a pole position by the best driver in the world, Max Verstappen. A 1:46.1, 0.8 of a second quicker than Charles Leclerc. A truly special lap from Verstappen. And nearly 0.9 of a second quicker than his own teammate. So the top 10 ends up Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, Sainz, Piastri, Norris, Russell, Alonso, and Stroll. And then the rest of the field. Actually, we'll get into the rest of the field in a moment, because I just want to, of course, with Max Verstappen's 5-place grid penalty, let you know what the starting grid will be for Sunday's race. So it will be Charles Leclerc on pole position for the second time in his career at this track. Sergio Perez will start alongside him on the front row. Lewis Hamilton will start third. That is a great position for Hamilton to be in, and a really good save given how Mercedes were looking earlier in Q3. Carlos Sainz will start fourth. Oscar Piastri will start 5th, and Max Verstappen will start in 6th. And then it'll be Lando Norris 7th, George Russell 8th, Fernando Alonso 9th, Lance Stroll in P10. And then the rest of the field, Yuki Tsunoda in 11th, Gasly 12th, Magnussen 13th, Bottas 14th, Ocon 15th, and then Albon in 16th, Zhou 17th, Sargent 18th, Ricciardo 19th. And starting at the very back for Sunday's race, Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas. But there you go, guys. Another brilliant qualifying session. And Verstappen proving that he, in that car, is way too quick. And even from 6th on the grid, he will be impossible to stop on Sunday. Have no doubt about that. There is no way that the opposition will stop Verstappen, because he will very quickly climb up positions from there. But guys, for the next 15 minutes or so, let me know in the live chat, what did you think of qualifying? And also, let me know in this poll I'm about to set up, who is your driver of the day for qualifying at the Belgian Grand Prix? And your options for driver of the day are Verstappen. Verstappen, Hamilton. Who else? Verstappen, Hamilton. I'll put Piastri in there, even though we do have to remember Lando's car definitely had some sort of damage to it. But still, great effort by Oscar to do what he did anyway. So yeah, I'll put Piastri in there and Tsunoda as well. For me, driver of the day is Max Verstappen, because, I mean, I predicted Verstappen to get pole easily, but I didn't think it would be 0.8 of a second. I thought it'd be around half a second. So, yeah, that is quite incredible by Verstappen. But let me know in the chat, guys, what you thought of qualifying and your driver of the day. Let me just see if there's any news on Twitter. And let's just see. Yeah, if I can find anything. And no, can't find any new news to bring you guys with the last few minutes of that session. What was I going to say? One thing I will say, of course, going into the session, Mercedes were a team to look out for because of the new upgrades they brought. Considering the conditions of the track, I'm not sure we can really tell how they've worked or not. So, yeah. With Mercedes, I'm not sure we can really give a great, opinion as to whether they're quicker than they were before. I think we'll have to... Sorry. I think we'll have to wait for the race on Sunday to really determine whether their car is a bit quicker than before. Because the weather forecast for Sunday is quite a bit drier than today, and should be a dry day. Of course, at Spa there is always a decent chance of rain, but yeah, we will see what happens with Mercedes on Sunday. But yeah, 3 different cars and 3 different powered cars in the top 3. That's, exciting to see. And when I say for the grid, I'm talking about the grid, not for qualifying, because obviously Max Verstappen will have a 5-place penalty. So it'll be Leclerc on pole, Perez second, Hamilton third. McLaren, I think, will be a tad disappointed with how qualifying went today. Not massively disappointed, because, I mean, coming into the weekend, I thought Ferrari and Red Bull would be quicker than them over a single lap. But I think they will be disappointed that Hamilton and Sainz are ahead of them as well. So, yeah, McLaren work to do in Sunday's race, which will definitely be a tricky, a tricky one. And it will be, quite difficult given McLaren's strengths and weaknesses to really finish on the podium. But you never know. We'll see on Sunday. And of course, there is the sprint race tomorrow where there are points on offer. But McLaren definitely will be a tad disappointed with how today went. Aston Martin, I don't think will be disappointed really, because that's where they are. 9th and 10th out of the, of the teams that are running, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, they're not as quick as those teams, simply. And are quite lucky that it was wet for a lot of the session, because if it was a bone dry session, I don't think they would have got both cars into Q3. So yeah, Aston Martin, still poor. AlphaTauri, good day. Obviously, if Daniel Ricciardo had not had his lap time deleted, they could have maybe had a better chance at getting into the top 10. You never know. But yeah, their pace looked pretty decent. Alpine, terrible. Quite bad for Haas as well. Alfa Romeo, given that we had some wet weather, I wasn't really... yeah, I expected a bit more from Alfa Romeo, to be honest, in these wet conditions, but we didn't really see anything from them. Williams, of course, disappointed, but we knew in the wet they were going to be a lot weaker. So, yeah, that's how it looks going into Sunday's race. Definitely an exciting grid. What's even more exciting is that if it is a dry race on Sunday, there hasn't been any dry running, really, this weekend to where the teams can do long runs and get data on heavy fuel to see what their pace looks like. So, and especially if it is wet for the sprint race tomorrow, we're going in completely blind to Sunday's race as to genuinely what the pace difference is between all of the teams. So, it's going to be an exciting day on Sunday, that is for sure. Alexander Wright, why were Williams weaker in the wet? Because they don't have the downforce levels to have the grip compared to other teams in the wet. Their car's just not a wet weather car. They don't have obviously the mechanical grip that other teams do have. Let's find some comments here if I can. Crystal Racing says McLaren should be pleased. Not sure they should, but I mean, I don't think they should get that disappointed, because I mean, 5th and 7th on the grid is absolutely fine. Nothing terrible. But them getting a podium is definitely a much harder job now than it was looking going into the weekend. Josiah saying, based off of car expectations, I'd say Hamilton, but Piastri definitely impressed me. Divine Existence says, insane how consistent Piastri is. Piastri has had really a great season, is as far as I'm concerned. When he's been slower than Lando, he's not been that much slower. And then, you know, when he's had his chances to get up into the points and deliver, he's taken them. He's not had, I will say, that much luck this year. Clearly, with especially his manager being Mark Webber, he is cursed with the Australian luck. That luck being no luck at all. So yeah, he's had a good season, a very good season, and I would say Piastri. I mean, it is still too early to say exactly where does he rank on the grid, but I think he is not that far away from me saying that he is a top level Formula One driver, right up there with your Norrises, Russells, Leclercs, drivers like that. But I just need to see a bit more before I can really say that. I want to wait probably till this time next year until I can really say that Oscar is a top Formula One driver, because obviously we need to see if he can progress from how he's performing at the minute. Mickey says there'll be a BS penalty if they hit Lewis for that rejoin. I can see why they would have issue with it, but yeah, I'd be surprised if they gave him a penalty, because I don't think it's really like a clear slam dunk. I think it would just be a lot better to just give him, like I said, a stern warning for rejoining in a safe manner. Let me find some other comments if I can. And I'll probably read out, I don't know, 2-3 more comments, and then I'll get to the poll and come to the end of the stream. Josiah saying Russell is a fraudulent driver. I wouldn't go that far, but this season has been very disappointing from him. Very disappointing. I mean, in Hungary, I know obviously his team fucked up his end of Q1, but compared to Hamilton, he was not really anywhere near Hamilton's pace. So, yeah, we have seen quite a drop-off from George Russell this year compared to last year, where he was right there with Hamilton when Hamilton was quicker than him, and through consistency, really, finished ahead of Lewis in the championship. Obviously, Lewis, wasn't the luckiest driver through 2022. But yeah, Russell has had a disappointing season, especially in qualifying. He's not been that quick in qualifying this year, to be honest. And that's really the main thing for him to work on. Because in the races, his pace seems to be fine. It's just, I don't know, he just can't hook up consistent good qualifying laps as of late. Crystal Racing saying Russell having an average year. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Ultimate Thor saying I'm recovering from a broken hip from motorcycling. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, hope you're, all that recovery's going well for you. Ultimate Thor also saying Max will win easily on Sunday. Yeah, absolutely no doubt about it. With that type of pace advantage over the rest of the field, yeah, there is absolutely no doubt that that Verstappen is going to win the race. Absolutely no doubt. Let me see if I can find a few comments. And then we'll get to the end here. Mickey says Leclerc had all 4 wheels over the white line at the same time Ocon went off at. Not sure that I saw that. We'll have to see if there's a replay of that. Bristol Racing says flops of quali: Russell, Hulk, Ocon, Ricciardo. And yeah, Mickey saying I saw Charles go wide in his fastest lap, so I don't think he will keep his time. Well, so far he has. And if he wasn't going to keep that lap time, I think it would have been deleted by now. So he looks like he's all good. And let me find one final comment. And then we'll get onto that final poll. Crystal Racing says, makes you wonder how much money Lewis is holding out for with Russell's sketchy form. Probably quite a lot. But Hamilton absolutely deserves it because he's been... I think Hamilton's had a very good year. I know obviously he hasn't won a race this season. Got nothing to do with him. The Mercedes car, nowhere near quick enough to win a race. Or even contend to win a race. I think Lewis has had a brilliant season. It's not peak Lewis Hamilton, but I think he's had a brilliant season. I can only think, really, of maybe a couple race weekends where he was not at his best, which would be Saudi Arabia and Miami. But every other weekend, And I know, obviously, Austria, he finished back in 8th and finished behind Russell because of a penalty, but he was way faster than Russell. Yeah, I think, really, Saudi Arabia, Miami, Silverstone probably as well. I know he finished on the podium, but he was slower than Russell during that race. And that race weekend as well. So, he's not at the absolute highest part of his game, but I think he's been brilliant for them. And most likely will come away from this weekend 3rd in the championship. And given where Aston Martin are going compared to Mercedes, Hamilton has a good chance of finishing there. But, yeah, that's it for your comments. Thank you guys, of course, so much for coming along for the stream today. Let me just end the poll in chat, where I asked you guys, who is your driver of the day for qualifying today at the Belgian Grand Prix? The options were Verstappen, Piastri, Hamilton, Tsunoda, and you guys went for Max Verstappen with 56% of the vote, 57 votes in total. Piastri second, Tsunoda, Hamilton third, and Tsunoda in fourth. Thank you guys for voting, and yeah, I agree. I think, I think Verstappen was definitely driver of the day. But let's now just quickly go on to, again, what my schedule is for the rest of the week and for the weekend. So tomorrow, as long as it's not raining too heavily at Spa, and I think we're actually going to get running in, I will be live tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. UK time for a watch-along of the F2 sprint race and then a preview and watch-along for the F1 sprint race. And I should be live until about 4:30 p.m. Again, though, that stream is not 100%, gonna happen, because with the way the rain has been so far this week, or weekend, and with what the forecast is like tomorrow, and given how cautious the FIA are wanting to be, rightfully so, there is a chance tomorrow we might not get much running in, or if any running in tomorrow. So I will let you guys know by like an hour before the scheduled start time if I think I'm going to stream or not. But if it gets to like 11:30 or even 12 p.m. UK time and the rain is, really heavy and it doesn't look like it's shifting, then I'm probably just not going to stream, because there's no point streaming for 4 hours when we're not going to get any action. And then Sunday, which is forecast to be dry, I'll be live at 12 p.m. UK time for the race preview and watch along. Race starts, of course, at 2 p.m. UK time, and I'll be live all the way through until 4 p.m. Yeah, make sure to come along for that content when it does happen. And if you are new to the channel, once again, before you go, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Before you go as well, guys, if you haven't already, smash that like button. We're currently on 61 likes. So it'd be great if you could smash that like button. And as well, if you want to keep up the content of this channel, make sure to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. And if you want to join our community, you can join our Discord server, link below in the description, and probably in the live chat as well. Yeah, we've got over 500 members in that server, in the Discord, and it is a great place, as long as you're active in the Discord, for notifications for videos and streams and just content updates in general. So if you want that, make sure to join the Discord server. But guys, thank you for qualifying today, and until, let's hope, not too wet of a sprint day tomorrow for Formula 2 and Formula 1, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.